All righty. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Stories Live. This is our January edition featuring Jeffe Kennedy. And in addition to Jeffe, we also have Steve Anderson, who has read for us before, Bowen Gillings, who's a new reader for our show. So that's very exciting. Got Rebecca Hodgkins, Jeff Wood, Matt Bille, and of course, Jeffe Kennedy. So let's see, before I go and spill more of my drink on myself, I'm going to go ahead and add Steve Anderson to the stream here. So, hello, how are you doing, Steve?
Good, doing well.
So, what are you reading for us tonight?
I have a story called If These Walls, which I'm not sure exactly how to categorize it. Maybe a little bit of urban horror.
Nice. All right. So you've got urban horror. So creatures in the big city eating people, or?
Of a kind.
Nice. Okay. All right. Well,
maybe we'll have the debate after everybody wraps up and we can decide how this should really be categorized.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. I will let you read on.
Okay. If these walls could talk, isn't that what people always say? Well, walls don't talk, or they shouldn't, but sometimes they do, at least to me. The walls were there when she died. Her blood splattered on them, from cheap shag to popcorn ceiling. The crime scene cleanup company had scrubbed and painted since then, but the stories remained, held in by whatever drywall, plaster, and Home Depot's cheapest eggshell white used for memory. I touched the wall, my fingers gentle. I touched it with the tip of my tongue. The fresh chemical smell of new paint filled my head, drowning out the whispered remembrance. I waited, and the story came to me. Piece by piece, her story came to me. Detective Lindell's description of the girl was accurate. Krista Baker was a mouse, 26, a billing specialist for local dentist Gregory Marston, whose office was less than 5 miles away. She opened the door to her apartment just wide enough to enter, and then closed it with a nudge from her hip. She leaned back against it, eyes closed, as though afraid the world was chasing her and would smash it down, that her outside life might find her hiding place. After a moment, she tugged her hair tie loose and shook out her brownish curls. She undressed on her way to the bedroom, peeling the Winnie the Pooh-themed scrubs off her body as though they had offended her in some way. She was all right, a few pounds more than slender, not beautiful or even pretty. Maybe cute, mostly forgettable, unless the personality inside her was something special. A mouse, as Detective Lindell had rudely put it. Krista exited her bedroom wearing pajama pants and a too large sweatshirt, feet bare, wireless earbuds overpowering the sound of traffic leaking under her door and through the windows. Don't believe him, Karen. Scott is just using you to get to your sister. It was the first words Krista had spoken since coming home. Her voice was pleasant enough, matched the rest of her, and if I didn't hear it every day, I'd probably forget what it sounded like. I talk to myself all the time when I'm alone. Maybe it's a guy thing, but Krista wasn't really alone. There was a romance novel playing in her ears. She provided earnest advice to poor Karen all through the boiling of the pasta, the tossing of the salad, and the glass of wine that was required to prepare dinner. She curled up on the couch when she was done eating, her plate and bowl rinsed and tucked into the dishwasher. A pillow cradled her head, and she clutched another one to her chest. No TV for Krista. She argued with the fictional Karen, mourning each loss, cheering each new hope, celebrating with shared tears the ultimate triumph of true love. The hour was late by then, so Krista wiped her eyes, disappeared into the bedroom, and closed the door behind her. Why do people do that when they live alone? I don't even close the door to the bathroom unless I have a guest, so pretty much never. I tried to move forward in the memory, but that's not always possible. The walls remember what they remember, and they talk in the way they want to talk. I waited. The door to the bedroom opened sometime after midnight, one hinge squalling a protest. Krista strode into the small kitchen and turned on the light above the stove. Her hair was mussed from her interrupted slumber, but her eyes were awake and angry, her forgettable face scrunched with the intensity of it. Krista squinted into the darkness of the living room, searching for something, or someone. Fury filled her when she found it. There you are. Thought you could hide, thought you could keep it a secret. I'm on to you, Karen. Scott is mine. She wasn't wearing her earbuds, so whatever she was hearing existed only inside her skull. Krista stared at the couch, fists on hip, and continued her conversation with Karen. Oh, is that right? True love? Stolen love, you mean? Stolen from me. She was silent for a few seconds, growing angrier, shifting her weight from foot to foot. That's a lie, like the rest of your life. Sister? You've never been a sister to me, not once. She wiped tears from her face and fumbled in the pile of books stacked on the end table. Her hand came back with a semi-automatic pistol. I will not be alone again, Karen. Scott will be back in my arms soon enough. I'll comfort him. I'll see him through the tragedy of your pathetic death. Krista aimed at the couch, arms straight in front of her. Then she stumbled back with a sharp grunt as though someone had punched her in the stomach. Her struggle with the invisible Karen was brief and one-sided. Krista lost. Her hands twisted until the pistol pointed at her chest. She pleaded with Karen to stop, swearing she was just trying to scare her. It was no use. Krista pulled the trigger. Or was it Karen that pulled it? The bullet ripped through Krista's chest and lodged in the wall where the forensics team would find it the next day. Blood splattered from floor to ceiling and soaked into the cheap beige carpet. In the silence after the shot, she used her last breath to whisper, Stay, please. I don't want to be alone, which only goes to show how wrong I can be. I thought I'd forget the sound of Krista Baker's voice. Krista's story had been told, and I had what I needed. Still, the walls held me. Was there more? I waited until sunlight peeked through the mini blinds onto Krista's face. She was on her back, legs twisted as she had fallen, eyes open. It would be a few more hours before she was late for work, and a few more hours after that before they found her. I didn't want to leave her. It felt wrong to leave her. I should stay. That's what the walls said to me. Stay. Never let the walls talk to you without backup, my dad had warned me. It's easy to get lost in the stories they tell. I had someone with me, my backup. Who was she? Remembering was a struggle. The shape of her ears came first, the sparkle of a diamond stud catching the light, her nose with a slight bend from when it had been broken, eyes deep brown that never left mine when we talked. There were two names belonging to the face, the one I sometimes called her in my head, and the one I used when she might hear me. The second one eluded me. That was all right. She'd understand. Emily? I slurred it out, but it was enough. The wall released me, and Detective Lindell, yes, that was it, that was her other name, knelt next to me. Looks like that was a bad one, Johnny. I knew that voice, would recognize it anywhere, any time. Low and warm, the voice of a woman who had seen too much to not be cynical, but still cared enough to be human. And she was the only one that ever called me Johnny. Yeah, I confirmed, it was a bad one. How long was I gone? To wherever it is you go? Almost 20 minutes. It wouldn't let me leave her, tried to trap me. She raised an eyebrow. You always say it's like playing a vinyl record. The light and sound leave an impression and you listen to the grooves. How do you get trapped in a record? I shook my head. I was being careless. You don't tell people their walls are alive. No one needs to know that. It was a bad one, I said again. She knew I was hiding something like she always knows, but she didn't know what or why. Sure, Johnny. She stood, leaving me on the floor. It was that creep dentist she worked for, right? He came here in the middle of the night, stalking her, and then he killed her. I bet $20 on it, despite the coroner calling it a suicide. I got up and put one hand on the wall to keep from swaying. The carpet under my feet was new, and I wondered if they'd replaced the subfloor. I stared at where Krista had died, she's still seeing her twisted body in the memory of the walls. A cheap apartment like this? It would have just sprayed the plywood with bleach and called it a day. No one would ever see the stain that I knew was there. Sorry about your money, Detective. Krista pulled the trigger. No one else was here. No, the wall whispered to me. Karen pulled the trigger. Do you want to see it again? I jerked my hand away from the wall. No, I don't want to see it again. Emily chewed on her lower lip, her teeth bright against the red of her lips. She seemed uncertain, like she was worried about me. Forget about it. $20 I can spare. You're not free of it yet, are you, Johnny? I'll be all right, I lied to her. Drop me back at my place. I got a class to teach tomorrow, and I need to sleep. She shook her head. Professor John Sexton, your class isn't until 2 p.m. I checked. I'm paying for this consultation, and I don't feel like I've got my money's worth out of you yet. The way I see it, I own you for 13 more hours. Let's go get a cup of coffee. A few hours more, listening to her low, warm voice, being able to look into her eyes while we talked. That was better than the sleep I'd miss. Way better, in fact. I nodded. Okay, detective, but you're buying. We walked out into the parking lot, our breath steaming in the cold night air. The world seemed normal again. A few cars driving by, the gas station across the street still open, lights so bright they hurt my eyes to look at them. I rested my hand on the door handle of Emily's car and waited for the chirp and thump when she unlocked it. She pressed the start button and cranked the heat up. The engine was still warm. It hadn't taken long to watch the finale of Krista's life. I asked Emily, what did Krista's parents say? Friends, were they surprised? She pulled onto Olive and headed east. Yeah, more than surprised. Nothing about her said suicide. I read every bit of her social media. Not thrilled with her work, wanted a boyfriend, whined that she didn't know how to find one, usual crap, but not dark enough to make anyone think she was done with life. I watched the glow of each street light as it passed across Emily's face. I'd never asked her age, late 30s maybe, like me. The corners of her mouth turned up while she drove, more a sign of her confident determination than that she was happy. Light and shadow moved across her, and I was afraid she might notice me staring. I forced myself to look at the street ahead of us. Detective Lindell of the St. Louis PD was paying me a few bucks to consult on a case that hadn't felt right to her, money from the funds the department gave her for snitches and other anonymous sources. I'd helped her several times before, providing inadmissible evidence that guided her to evidence she could use. She paid for those hours. I was important to her tonight. She owned me. Tomorrow, my name would start its long slide down the list of recent calls on her phone. Bendix Coffee Grinders is about a mile further on, I told her. They're pretty good. Closed. Emily kept her eyes on the road. They close at 12. Or there's a White Castle across the street from them if you're hungry. Hungry? Not for White Castles. She turned on Meyer, then turned again and again on the narrow residential streets before pulling over to the curb. I looked at the one-story house. Good coffee here? It's not bad. Whatever was on sale last week. You're not choosy, are you, Johnny? Only about what's important. With coffee, it's more about how you brew it. Make it hot and strong, and I'll be satisfied. Her mouth twisted in a sideways grin, and she opened it as though to say something clever, then thought better of it. She gave her head a quick shake, knocking a lock of dark hair down onto her forehead, and said, I'll make the coffee. You stay with me while I do it, and tell me what it was that spooked you. Tell me what the walls had to say about Krista Baker putting a bullet through her chest. Emily's kitchen was neat and well organized. I leaned on the counter, watched her make coffee, and told her about Krista's romance-fueled delusions and ultimate suicide. When I finished, Emily took my empty cup and set it in the sink next to hers. There has to be more, something you're not telling me. Krista killed herself. I'm sorry. No one else was there. It felt wrong when I said it, as though I had betrayed Krista and Emily both. I turned away from her. Emily came close and took my hand. Her voice was low, soft, warmer than the coffee. What is it you're not telling me, Johnny? Is there something you don't think I'll understand? Tell me, anyway. She curled her fingers around mine. I should have stepped back, but that wasn't going to happen. What are you doing? Her answer was to move closer. She kissed me, sliding her lips against mine, and then she rested her head on my shoulder. You remember the case you helped me with in July? The girl who stabbed her stepfather in the neck and claimed self-defense after a life of abuse? I kissed Emily's hair and put my arms around her waist to bring her up against me. Yeah, she did it on a dare and for a big insurance payout. Sociopath, you called her. You were wound up tight after watching that man die. I had to get you drunk before you'd tell me anything about what you saw. You were drunk too, as I remember. She leaned back and looked at me, corners of her mouth turning up. I don't feel like getting drunk tonight. We kissed, slow at first, ending with something more urgent. Emily tipped her head back, and I kissed her neck while she tried to catch her breath. She swayed a little as I worked my way down. I undid the top button on her blouse and kissed the skin under it. She pulled away, swallowed hard. Oh, wow, really doing this. Hey, Johnny, do you know how to make a fire? Sure. You rub two sticks together. Yeah, that's not what I mean. There's wood in the basket next to the fireplace. You start a fire. I want to change. Don't forget to open the flue. The desire to follow her into the bedroom was almost overpowering. Instead, I built a fire, one I hoped it would last a while without tending. Emily was wearing a silky green robe and matching shorts when she came back. She sat on the thick rug in front of the fire and pulled a pillow onto her lap, seeming unsure. The determination was still there, but the confidence had left her. I made a fire, I told her. She nodded. Thank you. She stared into the flames, and I stared at her, at the flickering light reflecting on her bare legs and in her eyes. Johnny, the walls, they remember everything that happens? I leaned forward and kissed behind her ear. The day-to-day stuff is a blur, people coming, going, sleeping, eating. The dramatic stuff leaves a mark. When the walls talk, that's what they talk about. Her attention was on the flames. If we make love here tonight, they'll remember it? That depends, Emily. Will it be dramatic? She took a deep breath before continuing. How long do they remember? Forever. So, 100 years from now, those walls of the apartment will still remember Krista Baker's death. That wasn't where I'd expected our conversation to go. I laid back on the rug with my hands behind my head. Yeah, those apartments seem new, but they're not built very well. I doubt they'll be around that long. Emily laid down next to me and tucked the pillow under her head. They've already been destroyed once. You remember the tornado that ripped through that area 5 years ago? Tore the roofs off the apartments and leveled a dozen homes. FEMA came in and rebuilt everything. They had to gut the buildings because everything inside got wet. All of the warmth went out of me. I propped myself up on one elbow and leaned over her. Krista Baker wasn't the first, was she? How many others? Emily's lips parted in a satisfied smile. 6 murders, 5 rapes, 14 violent assaults since they rebuilt, all without obvious motive. You solved it, Johnny. You know the answer. I can see it in your eyes, hear it in your voice. Yeah, I know the answer. I recited the cover story that I knew by heart. It's the same thing as happened with Hurricane Katrina. FEMA imported a bunch of drywall from China and used it to rebuild 100,000 homes. It was defective and outgassed carbon sulfide and other more dangerous chemicals. Some people saw things that weren't there. They had waking nightmares. It got worse when the weather was damp, and all the drywall had to be ripped out. Emily's eyes narrowed into slits. You know, Johnny, lies work better when you don't over-rehearse them. Try to be spontaneous next time. I kissed her forehead. Call the city building inspector tomorrow and have him test Krista's apartment. He'll condemn the whole building. He'll condemn everything they rebuilt, and that will be the end of it. Why would those guys listen to me? I shrugged. Don't worry about it. The head of the department's a friend of mine. I'll tell him to expect your call. She put her hand on my shirt, her eyes focused on her fingers as she played with the buttons. You're not going to tell me what it really is? Why don't you tell me? I've given you your money's worth. You can quit the act. That's all you wanted, isn't it? To solve the case? She chewed on her lower lip and shook her head. I don't like mysteries. Getting you drunk last time wasn't good enough. You gave me what I needed and nothing more. She sat up and wrapped her arms around her knees. I worked with some psychics a few years ago. They were fakes, con men, every one of them. This thing you do with the walls, it's real. I don't know how, but the walls talk to you. I thought maybe if I... She gestured at herself, at the fire, and the rug. Maybe you'd tell me how you do it. You were willing to sleep with me to get my secret? Don't judge. You seemed ready enough to jump me. Yeah? Maybe that's because... She interrupted before I could finish. Don't say it. You don't know me. Not really. It's not like we've ever even been on a date. Bonding over corpses and bloodstains doesn't count. Doesn't it? She didn't answer. I should go, I told her. I waited, wanting her to tell me to stay, despite the way she had used me, despite the danger. I would whisper my secrets to her before dawn. I knew I would. It seemed inevitable. She nodded. You should go. Give me a minute to put something on, and I'll drive you. It's all right. I'll catch an Uber. The city relocated the residents of Krista Baker's old apartment block in less than a week. It was another month before they approved the permits to bring the buildings down. My friend in the city building department let me know when it was going to happen. I took the day off so I could stand on the sidewalk across the street, watch a front-end loader dumping chunks of drywall and splintered 2x4 studs into a big roll-off dumpster. Makes a hell of a noise, doesn't it, Johnny? I would know that voice anywhere, anytime, low and warm. I didn't turn. I hadn't seen Emily since that night. Neither of us had tried to call. The sound of her voice close by my side stirred an ache in me that hadn't faded. Detective Lindell. The front-end loader emptied itself into the dumpster. I knew that was the sound she meant, the sharp sound of trash thudding against steel, and not the low moan as walls shattered and the evil in them died. Still, I shivered. I wanted to see it, I told her. Maybe Krista Baker and all the others will rest a little easier now that it's gone. She nudged me with her shoulder. You doing Restless Spirits now, too? I smiled. Nope. Good. I don't think I want to know about ghosts. I turned and looked into the deep brown of her eyes. Restless Spirits are a whole different department. I just do walls. Emily's eyes widened. Tell me that's a joke. It's a joke, I told her. If she wanted me to lie to her, then I'd lie. Have you had lunch yet, Detective? It's 10 in the morning, Johnny. What about a late breakfast? Brunch? She gave me a half smile and a raised eyebrow. Are you hungry? Not particularly. I'm trying to ask you out. Out? Yeah, on a date. It's what normal people do when they're attracted to someone. They sit in a diner or a restaurant and tell each other things about themselves. I thought maybe we should try it. I touched the back of my hand to hers to see if she'd take it. Warm fingers wrapped around mine. So, these normal people, they tell each other things about themselves? That's right. Secrets, sometimes. Once they trust each other, it's been known to happen. Emily nodded, and the corners of her mouth turned up. Sure, I'd like to go for an early lunch. And that's the end.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, sorry. We were just having a little chat in the comments about, whether you bonk or don't bonk in front of living walls. And I decided that, I'm not, not for that. I'm too private of a person. I'll write about stuff like that and overshare, but, I won't, actually act on it. Anyway.
I guess you have to use like a tent or something.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I don't know. That could be kind of fun, or like a pillow fort, just make something, there would still be audio, but that's okay. That's all right. Well, I will let you go and bring Bowen on here. All right. Hi, Bowen.
Hello.
So is there any sex in front of living walls in your story?
There are no living walls. I'm not saying anything about sex, though.
Okay.
In this particular reading that I'm going to do now, there's no sex, but there are clowns.
But not together.
Yes, but not in that way.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. This sounds good. I think I can handle it. So, yeah, I will let you read on.
Okay. So I'm going to be reading from the opening chapter of my novel called Exceptionals. And in Exceptionals, superhuman does not mean superhero. It's 1985 America, and superhumans are called exceptionals, those that can learn a language after reading 3 love letters, or have the bone density to stop a 38 caliber bullet, or balance atop a broomstick atop a basketball in a swimming pool. And their existence is secret. The main character, Larry Lawson, is a lone wolf, cheeseburger-loving federal protection agent with a dark past that must risk exposure and seek the help of some chemically dependent college custodians, a milquetoast student activist, and his jilted black belt ex-fiancée if he's to keep his favorite exceptional safe from the clandestine team out to kidnap her. With that, I give you Exceptionals. Chapter 1, The Bar. A clown walks into a bar. Clown jokes aren't funny. Not to me. Not after sprinting the past 5 blocks in these goddamn squeaky shoes, polka dot poofy suit, and Raggedy Andy hair. Not now, sweating through face paint, stumbling down chipped concrete steps into the chatty hum and incandescent buzz of the ruby fruit jungle. Not one thing funny about a clown walking in here. The cramped bar is packed with women. Women in leather and flannel sipping from glasses and slugging from bottles. Women in business suits and dresses. Women on their feet, perched on stools or poured into padded booth benches. None of them wears a spangly peach leotard. Damn it. Class drinks stop before reaching lips. Stories halt in mid-sentence. Unsettling quiet strangles the room as every eye turns to me. I gulp. Jimmy's boys are close behind, so I can't worry on being a circus rooster in an unfriendly henhouse. Pop always said to focus on the task at hand. Once again, Julia's my task. She's in here somewhere, and she won't be safe until I find her. Down the steps, thump, squeak, thump, squeak, thump, squeak, thump, squeak. Through a choking haze of cigarette smoke and estrogen, careful not to prod any shins with my big red water skis. No way a 6'4" man clown is going to slip casually through here. The lady crowd gives way with a smatter of grumbles, glowers never leaving me as I head to the bar. Sweat drips from my nose. A heavily pierced bartender in a sleeveless Izod shirt leans over the polished wood counter. She looks me over the way anybody would look over a circus act tromping into a lesbian bar at happy hour. With cocked eyes, she says, I have to say, first time for everything. I'm looking for a girl, I say. Regretted it the moment I said it. She laughs. Most of them laugh. Some go on about their business, and those around me keep staring. Funny, she says. You don't know how many times I get that line, but never from a guy dressed like you. She just came in here, short, lean, black hair in a braid, acrobat costume. The bartender eyes me carefully. Her hands don't leave the bar. That's good. Hidden hands send my highly trained, deeply suspicious, and profoundly defensive instincts into overdrive, which tends to make me want a gun at my hip. Please, I say. We have 2 minutes into the bad guy show, maybe less. She considers, then leans back and crosses her arm. Is the young lady in trouble, or did she give you trouble? The ladies aren't watching us like we're the best show. The ladies are watching us like we're the best show in town. Guess if I were in their shoes, definitely more practical than what I'm wearing, I might pause, sharing the tale of my day to pay attention to. A few patrons would press closer, and none look amused. A big one, neck as broad as her head, grinds away on a mouthful of gum like she wants to chew me up and spit me out. My right hand twitches. No badge to reach for, no gun, not anymore. I clear my throat. She's in trouble, real life or death trouble, and it's on its way here, now. For all this woman knows, a desperate, sweaty clown is chasing his circus honey through her bar. A great story for weeks to come. But then again, the scars on her knuckles and the Marine Corps tattoo on her forearm tell me she's seen some shit in her day. She has to be asking herself if she wants any more. Her fingers drum on the bar top, and her eyes tighten to angry slits. Oh, please, lady. Bathroom, that way. She jerks her head to signal around the bar. Thank you. Courtesy never hurts. Thump, squeak, thump, squeak. The ladies of the Ruby Fruit Jungle grudgingly part to let me pass, each one giving me her personal stink eye along the way. The noise of their conversations hums back to life behind me. 2 rough brown doors flank a sticker-covered payphone and a glossy Bill Cosby advert for New Coke. Both doors bear the circle and dangling cross. Guess they really don't need a men's room here. I push open the closest door to an assault of bleach and lavender and purple and beige. Stalls are all open, no legs below, no window to get out. She's not here. A tall clone of Sandy from the last scene in Grease steps from the bathroom number 2. What? She sneers at me like a clown at happy hour is nothing new. Excuse me. I shoulder past and through the swinging door. Julia's here, hiding in the last stall, trying to keep quiet, but her whimpers echo off the tile. Julia, we need to go. Maybe a minute before the goon squad arrives to make things hairy. Then me and these shoes are her only chance at avoiding a life of needles and tubes while wearing a hospital frock in a cold white room. Oh, fuck, Larry, really? She shouts through the frightened sobs. Here? You followed me here? I shuffle slowly forward, shoes scraping and wheezing. She's been through so much. Hate scaring her anymore. They're coming. We have to leave now. I'm not going anywhere. If those clowns want to come drag me away, they can damn well try. There's a sniff, then the honk of blowing her nose. Goddamn clowns. I'm trying to keep you safe. Oh, stow it. That's what you said when you brought me to the circus. No place safer, you said. Won't have to hide here, you said. I did say that. Taking her there made sense. She could be who she is right out in the open. Just an acrobat with perfect balance, who I've seen juggle flaming torches perched on one foot atop a broomstick, atop a basketball, in a swimming pool. An exceptional like her can do things the other 99.9% of humanity can't, no matter how hard they work or what drugs they take. Of course, that's the goal of the opposition pricks hot on my tail. Make exceptional drugs so that she can do what she can do is available to the highest bidder. For the last few years, the plan had worked until Jimmy and his assholes pierced our ruse, and now look at us. I grip the stall door. All I can say is, I'm sorry. Please, come out so we can get to someplace safe. Just leave me alone. She knows I can't. Keeping Exceptionals safe is my job. Keeping her safe is also personal. Julia, either open this door or I will break it down. Another sniff. Slippered feet shuffle into view. The locking bolt slides free and the stall door opens. She's like a fairy. Barely tall as my chest, pale tights, golden spangles on her leotard shimmering in the fluorescent light. Black trails of mascara stain her cheeks. I hate this, she whispers. I know. Bar noise outside gets quiet. Sweat trickles from under my wig. Heart does a drum roll against my ribs and my old scar starts itching. Oh, shit. The bathroom door creaks and I push Julia behind me. My hand goes for the grip of my Smith, a Smith I haven't carried in years, and finds only some gauzy pink frill stitched around my middle. The bull-necked gum chewer steps in, closing the door behind her. You bring the whole damn circus or what? She drawls between wet chomps. Christ, they're here. So much for slipping away. How many? I ask. 4. All clowns? Yep. One of them a dwarf, a little person. Avoiding insults based on physical appearance is a reflex, another thing Pop taught me. He'd say, why offend someone for something they can't change? Well, if Pop knew this little prick like I do, he might make an exception. With a red ball of a nose and a goofy big hand, and a taser and a blackjack and likely some brass knuckles. The Jimmy the Fist. I knew it. Tomorrow's headline will read Clowns Crash Lesbian Bash. Huge fucker with him too, bigger even than you. Well, that would be Bart. I fingered Jimmy as the lead agent days ago, but because Bart isn't smart enough to run a team, but he is muscle enough to be a team of his own. So who are the other two? We're in trouble, aren't we? Julia asked behind my back. Yes, we damn well are. We'll be fine. I look at the bullneck. Can you stall them? Give us time to get out back? She stuffs her hands in her jean pockets and shrugs, looking past me to Julia. He a good guy? A pregnant pause. Really? After the past 6 years? Then, yeah, he's a good guy. The throttle eases on my thudding heart, jangling nerves quiet. Why not? Bullneck says with a shrug. Might be oof! The bathroom door slams into her back and she reels forward, banging off the counter. Bart's bulk looms in the open doorway, bald cap hung with a broad green beard, striped shirt and socks, with cut-off overalls several sizes too small for his enormous frame. The circus bills him as Oleg the Magnificent, strong man of the Caucasus. Some days he pulls a double duty as one of the clown crew. Must be one of those days. His real name is Bartholomew Rockintansky, Special Agent Rockintansky, and he can military press 300 pounds with a bad case of the flu. Why wasn't a guy like him snatched and probed by the opposition? Maybe he had been. Maybe hunting down his own or the terms of Bart's parole from their quote-unquote program. Whatever the case, I couldn't let the gorilla get a hold of Julia. Stay behind me, I say in my best, it will be all right tone. She does as I ask, thank God. Bullneck is on her ass, rubbing the back of her head and groaning. Found her, Bart bellows over his shoulder, then squints at me. That you, Lawson? I knew there was something familiar the way you ran off. It must be the shoes. How the hell are we going to get past him? You know Health and Human Services has no jurisdiction here unless someone spotted a roach behind the bar. So why don't you just stand aside? He steps forward. Can't do that, Bart. There's no jurisdiction for either of us. We just serve different masters. His wants to capture or kill Julia and all the other exceptionals. Mine are trying to keep them safe and secret. So much for my years-long HHS cover story. He shrugs, a broad smile breaking out on his shovel of a face. I know. Felt it my duty to give you the chance is all. Thump, squeak, thump, squeak. Gonna be a bitch thrown down in these shoes. Bart strides forward with that special disregard of a big man coming into a fight. He smirks down at me, flexing his fists. One punch from those frozen turkeys and it's lights out, and he pays Bullneck no mind. I see her over his shoulder, standing up, big vein bulging on her temple, lip curled in a sneer. Excuse me, she growls. Bart doesn't even look at her. Stay out of this, lady. It doesn't concern you. Now that's no way to treat a woman, Bullneck says in her grizzly bear voice. She punts him from behind, square in the crotch. Bart's eyes bulge, his jaw drops open, and he doubles over, squealing like air from a pinched balloon. She plants her foot against his ass and shoves, sending him past me into the wall, a sprawling tumble of striped socks and stretched denim. Christ! Bart hisses through gritted teeth as he rolls up, both hands jammed between his legs. Situational awareness, Bartholomew. It's not Pop's wisdom. That was the Army's. A solid right to his temple in big bed, Bart slumps to the floor. My knuckles throb, like punching a brick of marble. Let's go. I grab Julia's hand, giving Bullneck a cursory nod as we pass. The lady can handle herself. Hopefully she's smart enough to be gone from here before she gets worse. Another clown steps into the doorway as we're about to leave. Bright yellow cotton candy explosion hair. Hey, Bart, what the... A quick jab to the throat and he goes down, coughing. I shove past him. The other two clowns are struggling through the crowd. One I don't recognize, a tall broomstick with rainbow suspenders and a foot-wide necktie. The little person I know all too well. It's Jimmy the Fist. That blue and white patchwork onesie, that red ball nose, that single giant telltale glove all stitched and stuffed to look like a massive cartoon hand. That's where he hides his toys. That's not how he got the nickname. My groin gives a shadow ache at the flash memory of hand-to-hand training sessions with that little prick. Come on. I drag Julia down the hall to the back. Thump squeak, thump squeak, thump squeak, thump squeak. Thanks to whichever government entity mandated marked emergency exits. Where are we going? She puffs from behind me. Out of here. She won't like that answer, but specifics have to wait. The hall ends in a dark paneled wall with a sticker-ridden steel door on the right. I slam against the candy-striped bar marked emergency exit alarm will sound. And what do you know? A weak bell clangs like an old brass alarm clock. The door, however, doesn't budge. What is it? Julia shouts. I try it again. Nothing. Damn thing won't open. I take a step back and hit it again. The door moves a rusty, grating half-inch. The alarm bell gains vigor and rings piercingly clear. In the main room, women react to the alarm, jostling for the front door and adding to the clamor. They balk at Jimmy and Broomstick, shoving against the tide. Cotton Candy struggles up from the checkered floor. No sign of Bart. I hit the door one more time, so hard my teeth ache, maybe another quarter of an inch. Let me help. Julia sets her back against the cold steel, then walks her feet up the opposite wall until she's suspended, horizontal, 5 feet off the floor. Incredible. She grunts. The ropey muscles of her acrobat legs bulge and strain. She screws up her face and heaves. I shove with her, jaw clenched, shoes wheezing, breath hissing with the effort. The door creeps open a hand's breadth. She eases off a bit, sucking in air for another go, then yells, "Behind you!" I spin in time to see Broomstick's charge, arms pumping, oversized tie flapping out to the side. He dips low for a tackle. I shift with his momentum, pivot, and launch him like a goofy cannonball beneath Julia, tumbling over my own shoes in the process. He smacks against the panels with a wood-splintering crunch. Keep pushing! I grab Broomstick by those silly suspenders and drag him away from the door. He struggles, kicking, groaning, blood dribbling from his chalk-white face from a cut on his scalp. A hard clip to the base of the skull, and he goes limp. I turn around and bam! Every muscle fiber locks up. My back arches. My mouth goes rigid. Teeth grind in a vibrating rictus. Hands jiggle like a fish just pulled from a lake. I taste ozone and the salty copper of my own blood. Pain. Searing pain. Ah! I gurgle, then go all jelly and drop in a heap on the floor beside Broomstick. Jimmy did have a taser, little bastard. Oh, crap! Julia gasps and gives one last desperate shove. Metal shrieks, but the door only cracks open another inch. There's daylight in the gap. Not enough for her to get away, but enough for the bar's AC-cooled air to rush by blessedly, invigoratingly across my damp face. For a brief instant, she hangs there, muscles quivering, face twisted with fear and strain, stretched out like a magician's assistant, waiting for the silver rings to be drawn over her. Then she tucks her legs into a backward somersault and touches down, more graceful than a leaping house cat. Just a glimpse of why I'm here and why they want her. She stands poised in the balls of her feet. Her wide eyes slip from me to the two clowns coming down the hall, to the motionless one in suspenders, and back. A cornered deer, hoping for rescue from one already dropped by the hunter's bullet. I'm no help. Pins and needles stab at my spine. I can feel my limbs work. Just gotta get them under control. A couple minutes and I'll be right as rain. If only we had a couple minutes. I focus on what I can see and hear, working fast on a way to get Julia out. Now just hold on, Jimmy bellows in his deep baritone. Always creepy, that voice coming from a body no bigger than a first-grade boy. Jimmy edges closer, smarmy smile on his tricolor face, hands up like he's approaching a squirrel in the park, taser wires dangling from that fat middle finger on that enormous glove. Cotton Candy hair is right behind him, coughing and rubbing his throat in his own normal-sized white-gloved hand. Impressive display as always, Julia, Jimmy calls over the alarm. Now please, come with us. No one wants to hurt you. She stays put. Some important people want to just ask you a few questions, that's all. Oh, Jimmy. After finding her family murdered, being forced into a new life in the circus, and 2 attempts at kidnapping, you really think a little soft talk's going to ease her down? And Julia doesn't disappoint. She gives him the look. That look of someone who's reached the edge and won't be pushed a step further. It's the look I saw in the mirror and decided to do something good with my life. The day I took this job. Julia's whole body has that look. Hips cocked, arms at her sides, eyes narrowing in her tilted head. It's a look that says she's done with this shit. Or perhaps she's embraced the ridiculousness of running across town to hide from angry clowns in a lesbian bar. Fuck off, Jimmy, she shouts. God, I love her spunk. Fatherly pride, were I her father. The feeling returns to my toes. Jimmy stops. Cotton Candy sidles up, no longer rubbing his throat, but shielding something vaguely pistol-like from Julia's view behind his pint-sized boss. Jimmy shakes his head. Such language. He twists that big mitt of a hand. A fishing reel winds, squeals above the bell, and the wires zip back into his glove. I fight to roll over, to get up, to stop them from taking her. But I might as well be a baby trying to walk on day one. All I manage is to sit up a few inches, then flop back down, spent. Come on, kid. Stall for 30 seconds more. The alarm stops, eerie quiet after the incessant clanging. Tromping, clacking footsteps come up the hall from the bar. Many footsteps. Angry footsteps. Jimmy stays put. Cotton Candy doesn't. He turns to face what's coming. That pistol isn't a gun. Well, not the firearm variety, at least. It has no slide, no cylinder. Women are what's coming. Women in leather, women in flannel. Half a dozen very determined-looking women. The ex-Marine bartender and Bullneck in the lead. The former brandishes a 12-gauge pump that could turn this corridor into a charnel house with a single blast. Oh, thank Christ. I miss having a gun. There's got to be a clown joke in this somewhere, the bartender says, no hint of amusement on her face. Yeah, fucking funny one, Bullneck chimes in, still going to town on that gum. Something like, what do you do when you're attacked by a gang of clowns? The bartender shrugs. You go for the juggler. The ladies snort. One laughs. Jimmy grinds his jaw, shoulders hunched as he turns around. Cotton Candy lets him past, clenching and unclenching the grip of that weird gun. The smooth body of it ends in a narrow point. Ladies, there's no need for all this, says the fist. He keeps talking. I summon what I got left to get up. It's like moving through clay and razors. But I'm moving. What Cotton Candy's carrying has a small aluminum sphere where the hammer should be. Well, I'll be. I haven't seen one of those outside of a vet's office. Are you all right? Julia whispers, hunching over me. She adjusts my yarn wig for whatever reason. I've been better, I say, ears ringing, straightening one leg. Now listen, things look to get messy. And I need you to do exactly as I say. And that's where I'm going to stop.
All righty. Let's see. I don't know if my things are really working here. I'm going to just... unmute mic. All right. Can you hear me? Whoops.
I can hear you.
Okay, cool. All righty. So thank you, Bowen. And thank you for all the onomatopoeia. We got to use a lot of onomatopoeia, in the chat here, which is exciting. Love using big words and feeling smarter.
I thought it was a good follow-up to, the Walls of Death. So
awesome. All right. Well, you have somebody, going clap, clap and whatnot. So, have your people. All righty. So let's see. I will let Bowen off here. And so next we have Rebecca. So just go ahead and add you. Hey.
Hello.
So, are you doing 13 Ways of Looking at a Dinosaur?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Okay. I saw your post before, so I was like, I know that story. Awesome. I will let you get to it then.
All right. So this little different direction from the previous two. Like Amy said, it's called 13 Ways of Looking at a Dinosaur. And it may or may not be about dinosaurs. So I'll let you decide. 13 Ways of Looking at a Dinosaur. 1. I have a fantasy where you kiss me in front of all of our friends, but instead we go bird watching. You love birds. I'll always remember that, no matter where I end up. You studied them all your life, even before you became a professional ornithologist. You used to tell me how, as a kid, you'd lie on the ground and stare at the tree branches, looking for nests, listening for their songs every spring, every summer, every fall, listening to how their songs changed depending on the seasons depending on the bird's needs. How the tiny winged creatures are what we have left of dinosaurs. I thought birds were just okay, but I loved you. So I learned about them too. My favorite branch of science was smaller than that, and infinitely larger at the same time. I wonder if that's why I was knocked out of my life like a loose tooth and into yours over and over again. 2. It started with my assignment at the Hadron Collider. No one knew what would happen when we fired it up. We only wanted a peek at the smallest particles. But would smashing subatomic particles together create a hungry black hole to eat our world? Or would it change the fabric of our universe in subtle ways? Maybe open doors into other universes? Who would be brave or luckless enough to explore them? I guess I know that answer. This is how I remember meeting you. On campus, our last year. I'd never seen you before, but that's nothing unusual. We went to a large college. But you stood out in the crowd. The way you walked across campus, not looking at anyone, just looking up into the trees. I loved the absent-minded smile on your face instantly. I wondered what you were thinking. I wondered if you were thinking about anyone in particular. I wondered if you'd ever think about me. Okay, so I stalked you a little bit. Not unlike the way that you followed the birds, always watching out for them. I watched you until one day you looked away from the trees and right at me. And you smiled like we were old friends. Before I could stop myself, before I could be afraid, I walked right up to you. I told you I was in your world history class last year. I wasn't. But it was a good way to start a conversation. I've never been so forward with anybody in my life, but I've never been so determined to have someone in my life either. Not then and not now. You are my rare bird. You were dating someone else, but that didn't matter to me. I told myself, well, aren't college relationships fleeting? Not that ours would be. Not if I had anything to say about it. Turns out I didn't, until I did. I had a lot to say about it. Enough to change the universe. Or universes. It gets confusing. I know you don't understand. You never will. Not like I do. You know, I thought they were just lizards at first. They ran in front of us along the forest floor as we looked up to the branches, watching for birds instead. It was funny how you never cared about lizards, even though they are related to birds. Or at least they were. The first ones ran on 4 legs, and they had dull brown skin, the color of the dead leaves paving the path. I was used to seeing green lizards, so these caught my eye. I pointed and I asked you about them, and you shook your head and said, not my area of expertise. You looked back up into the branches, watching for your favorites. You told me about the ivory-billed woodpecker, how people thought it was extinct until someone heard its sound in the middle of the swamp. You wanted to do something like that, find a long extinct bird and tell the world about it. Out of all of this, I think that's the most ironic. The lizards got bigger. I thought maybe they were young and just growing up quickly. What did I know about lizards? About as much as you did. But each time we went out, we saw fewer birds. Funny, it bothered me more than it did you. You didn't notice anything different, but I did. The more lizards I saw, the fewer birds. Not only did the lizards get bigger, some of them started running on their hind legs. I pointed them out to you. I told you how much they reminded me of the way that robins ran, especially when they saw a tasty worm up ahead. You told me robins didn't see worms. They felt the vibrations in the ground. Robins were terrible at seeing. They had to turn their heads in order to catch any sort of movement. These lizards did too. They didn't have eyes that they could roll in their sockets, but they did have tiny, sharp teeth. I'd watch them go after carpenter ants, worms, spiders in their webs. They'd leap up for these, tear the webs, catch the spider, jump back down. I got a little unnerved, along with curious. So you suggested that I go home and look them up. I found out these funny lizards were called Tyrannosaurus minor. How cute, I thought, naming these little guys after Tyrannosaurus rex, long extinct. The only thing surviving is the name. Little did I know. I thought they were lizards. Anyone would. I mean, anyone where I'd come from. I didn't realize that they were dinosaurs. 3. I didn't mind the dinosaurs, not so much, not at first, when I still thought that they were tiny lizards that couldn't hurt anything bigger than a vole. No. Instead, what got me was your growing warmness. Part of the reason why I followed you into the woods bird watching was so that at some point we could find an open meadow full of soft grass, spread out a blanket, lie under the warm sun in each other's arms, like we were 2 kids trying to get away with something. Both in our 20s, well out from under our parents' watch, no significant others anymore, no children, just each other. And yet, it was fun to think we had something to hide, something so new and precious that it couldn't survive outside of being hidden. I wanted it just for ourselves. The bigger the lizards grew, and they did grow, the more you loved me. It made sense. Time was passing. We were sharing more and more of ourselves with each other. You told me you liked the way my eyes changed color, depending on whether we were in the forest or out under the open sky. You liked the way the copper color of my hair lit up in sunlight, but became a duller brown under the tree cover, like camouflage. Birds did that too. It was always back to birds with you. 4. We used to laugh about the Mandela effect, joking about our conflicting memories, how I must have come from one universe and you from another. But isn't that how all relationships start? Don't we all come from different universes, marveling at our differences in perception, in our memories, and what we believe in, what we laugh about, what we disregard, the things that we fear, and the things that we love and cherish? I didn't notice the Mandela effect at first, just chalking it up instead to my inexperience with birds. We'd go bird watching, see the same bird that we'd seen a week or 2 before, and I would whisper its name to you like an endearment. Oriole, cedar waxwing, great heron. You'd smile, shake your head, and say, "That's not its name." Then you'd tell me a name that I never heard before. I swear it. Oleot, pine flyer, greater capron. So you'd tease me about my poor memory, and I'd tell you, no, I must have slipped into a new universe again. It was a joke, I swear. I started asking you how we met. Sometimes your story matched mine, though never quite. But do 2 people's stories ever really match? Probably not. But ours varied much too wildly for my comfort. On the days when you don't hold my hand, and I know that we won't be lying together in the field, you remember that I was the one who approached you. You act a little annoyed that I'm even asking. It distracts you from your bird watching. I distract myself with the lizards underfoot, now small again and not very threatening, not even little T-Rex minor. But every now and then, on the days when you can't stop touching me, you're the one who stalked me in college. In my favorite stories, I'm eating lunch in the cafeteria, grimacing because it's so bad. That never seems to change from telling to telling. I'm in the cafeteria. You sit down across from me. or you sit to my left, or you sit down to my right. You sit down at the table across from me, but within my view, subtly trying to get my attention. Your stories make me feel like you were the one circling me, a blackbird defining an invisible boundary in the sky. 5. On my way to the physics lab, I started seeing the lizards in the city as well. In the parks, they would chase squirrels. They got that big. It frightened me, I'll admit. But what scared me more was that no one else seemed to notice them. I mean, it's not like the other people didn't see them, but they saw them so often that they just took the lizards for granted. The city birds faded away. No more flocks of pigeons, gray as newspapers flapping in the wind, descending on some old man or woman with a bag full of dried bread. No more blackbirds circling around like moving constellations, chasing crows or ravens away from their vulnerable nests. And those two species disappeared as well. Scavenger birds, just gone. Impossible. The city birds disappeared at the same rate that the signs popped up warning residents to tighten down their trash can lids to keep out the dinosaurs. That stopped me in my tracks. To see the word in print on the side of a building, and to see people take it seriously, not as a joke, not as some weird meme. And then to see a small pack of velociraptors working together to get into a dumpster to harry the homeless man sleeping inside. I was afraid to ask anybody about it. Silly, I know. It sounds insane to me now. I mean, surely someone else must have noticed how things had changed. But you didn't even notice. And if I couldn't talk to my lover about it, who could I talk to? We saw fewer and fewer birds in the woods too. And the ones we did see were consistently dull gray or brown, their songs uninteresting. At the same time, the lizards grew brighter, more outlandish the farther along I went. No more bare, leathery skin, maybe an olive green stripe here or there, a black spot, a little smudge of dull at the breast like a robin. Dull brown skin turned to fluorescent blue, shining green, golden spots, and the feathers that aren't like bird feathers at all, but hairier somehow. Just as bright, though. Peacocks have nothing on these dinosaurs. I started to hear little chirping sounds coming from them, like a blackbird's song. When I mentioned it, you seemed to take their calls for granted. Even though I'd never seen these bright creatures before, you acted as though they were as common as birds, the birds that were becoming fewer and fewer, which made you more intent on finding them. We went from bird watching to bird hunting. And as I went bouncing along universes, your desire to prove that one extinct bird still existed became the desire to prove that any birds existed, ever. Meanwhile, I labored in my lab, hunting for an explanation to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy. And later, to find a way to keep you with me. But even in the lab, things changed. My colleagues looked at me funny when I mentioned quarks. Quirks, you mean? I smiled, nodded, tried not to scream. At night, you held me close and whispered myths about geese flying overhead. 6. I watched cultural touchstones disappear. Storks don't bring babies. There is no dove of peace, no cartoon coyote and roadrunner playing life and death in the desert. I think it's odd how the birds are never replaced by dinosaurs. Stegosaurus doesn't bring babies. Pterodactyls don't carry olive branches. Tyrannosaurus rex does not chase Brontosaurus past saguaro cacti and straight into oncoming semis. There are holes everywhere, holes that only I can feel. But these holes don't touch me because more and more I have your love. 7. Teeth. Ours vary between sharp incisors and flat grinders. The dinosaurs I see now have long rows of sabers in their mouths, the better to catch and kill a luckless pedestrian. Birds don't have teeth at all. Rare as a hen's tooth, wasn't that the saying? You don't remember. I don't expect you to. Just another quirk between us. Quirk. You remember 100 different ways how we met. Your stories are how I keep track of where I am. At night, when the world is quiet and you're lying next to me in the dark, I ask you, how did we meet? Sometimes you think it's a game. Sometimes you get annoyed. It depends on where I am. That's my gauge, too. Your patience with me lets me know which direction I'm moving. Towards the universe where I started, or away from the safe universe where you don't love me. I turn over, hoping that when I wake up, I'll have moved closer to the you who loves me again. Your emotions are my compass, and your love is my North Star. If you wake up and look at the drawings of birds on the wall without any discernible reaction, as if they're any other sort of picture, I know you'll look at me about the same way, and that I am closer to home, but you are farther from me. I know that what embarrasses you is not some mythical creature, but the reality of me, of sharing my bed. I know you'll get up and you'll leave without a kiss goodbye. But I won't be running for my life that day. No dinosaurs chasing me down an alley or through the woods or dropping like meteors from the sky. Sometimes the trade-off is worth it. Sometimes not. At least when I'm running, I feel alive. But when you look at me with that flat, indifferent stare, I don't feel alive at all. I almost wish I were dead. Because I know how you can be. I know just how much you can love me. Enough to do anything you can to keep me safe. Sometimes the you I wake up next to is the one that I want to keep forever. The one who reaches for my hand under the covers. The one who rubs my back. The one who isn't quick to jump out of bed and be on your way without any explanation. The one who used to confuse me. But when I wake up next to the loving you, I'm afraid to pull up the shades, open the window, see a T-Rex on a distant hill, and hear no blackbird's song. I study your sleeping face. Who are you without your birds? Besides more mine. Is that it? Has it always been a question of me or the birds? No, I don't think so. 8. You love your birds. I love my numbers. I try to put the situation together in my head, a 3-variable equation. More birds, fewer dinosaurs, less love. More love, more dinosaurs, birds disappear. A more dangerous world, but I have you. The more afraid I become of the world, the more I circle back to the universe where this started, the safer the world, and the less you love me. How messed up is that? 9. Why dinosaurs? I know that nature abhors a vacuum, but this is a little ridiculous. Think about a bird. Think about its weight. Think about everything that people say about birds. Delicate as a bird, bird-boned, bird-brained, light as a feather, the softer the better. You would think that birds wouldn't take up too much space in reality. So why is their counterbalance a huge thundering lizard, something that shakes the earth when it walks, that hunts the former apex predator, running away on 2 insignificant legs? Why can't the counterweight to birds just be me? 10. In a relationship, there's always one person who gives up more than the other. Whether it's one person picking up and moving to someone else's hometown, or just changing where they spend their holidays. Always one gives up more than the other. Always one is more flexible and one is the anchor. I'm the one who decides to pursue the loving version of you. And when I do manage to find you, I must decide whether to keep you or to give you up. Will it be birds or will it be dinosaurs? I'm selfish to keep you. You have no idea how selfish. My love for you changes the universe. That's not poetry. You know I'm not poetic by nature. I'm pragmatic, the scientist studying the fixed equations of the cosmos, unable to break their laws. No, I'm not. Not anymore. I'm in love instead. 11. I wake up and you're beside me in bed, and the walls are blank. There are no photographs, no Audubon illustrations of finches and woodpeckers and roadrunners decorating the wall. All of these I hung on the walls for you because you love birds so much, even though you think they're silly mythological creatures. In this world, you've taken the bird illustrations down, embarrassed that you're still kid enough to believe in them. You hit the snooze button and snuggle closer. You whisper that you want to marry me. The walls are cracked and the earth shakes to the deadly rhythm of thunder lizards. My heart beats faster while yours stays calm, confident that you can keep me safe, keep us safe. You've studied dinosaurs all your life. You know their habits. We'll be fine. You laugh at my apprehension like I'm a child just afraid of a storm. I can't get out of bed today, I whisper. How can you marry someone who can't get out of bed? I call in sick and you work from home. Your computer sits on your lap and I stay curled up next to you. Tomorrow, I may awaken next to a different, colder you. I do everything I can not to fall asleep and lose you. The roaring outside helps keep me awake. 12. Did you know a bird actually once stopped the collider? It somehow dropped a piece of bread onto the machinery, causing everything to shut down. I wonder if it was an accident, or if the birds of another universe, upon sensing their impending extinction, sent one of their own to stop it, or at least slow down the inevitable, since we cleaned out the piece of baguette and started everything back up. Maybe it stalled the collider enough to save the birds in that single universe, stop the rise of the dinosaurs. Maybe I could find that place of intelligent birds and take you there with me. But chances are you'll stay here wondering where I've gone, or you'll wake up to a different me while I wake up to a different you, a you who studies birds and doesn't need me. A safer world, but colder. I do everything I can not to move backwards, despite the dangers ahead. When dinosaurs take wing, red, yellow, green, purple against a bright blue sky, against white canvas clouds, dark shadows blot out the sun. As they get bigger, we run from shelter to shelter while they dive bomb us, you shouting that you love me and that you'll always keep me safe. I shout back lines from Hitchcock's The Birds and laugh hysterically, even though you have no idea what I'm talking about. You sigh and say, more of your Mandela effect. When the very memory of birds are completely gone and the dinosaurs roam free, their footsteps like storms that rage through the earth rather than the sky, I wonder if there is an empty hole inside of you where your love for birds once lived. What do you think is missing from that space? Because in this dinosaur-ridden world, not only do you have me, but you want me. That's what you say, that you love me, that I am the most important thing in your life. But I know the hole is there inside you. I know it's there because of the way that you stare off into space, up into the tree branches, and the little bits of blue sky beyond them. You say you're watching for the flying dinosaurs, the ones that can swoop down and pick us up. Like a hawk, I say, before forgetting where I am, where we are. You look at me so funny then. When I say things like that, there's a small glimmer in your eye, the quick light of a recollection, but something you couldn't possibly remember. Less than a dream, much less than a memory. Maybe a hope. This is the you that I marry. This is the you that I hold on to so tightly. I lose so much sleep, my eyes turn blood red, and you slip a sleeping pill into my drink. You meant well. You were only trying to protect me from myself. 13. I wake up alone. Outside, blackbirds greet the dawn, marking the place where the dinosaurs disappeared. The end.
Sorry, I was just like, I don't know. That story always makes me so sad. But I remember, like, I listened to a couple of versions of it, like the first, I think when you were first working on it, like you read it at a reading, and then it came out in V's book, and I was there for that reading at Book Bar, and then, you actually autographed it. And I'm like, wow, there was a time when we could actually like go to readings in person, and like, there were lots of alcoholic beverages and things like that. Now
sadly, that was a few universes ago, right?
I know. It is so sad that we are in this other situation. I mean, I don't know. And there are many things that are sad about it, including the fact that, like, yesterday, actually, I was going to go and run an errand that I'd been putting off for a long time, and, got in the car, went to start the car, and realized I hadn't tried to do that since October. And of course, it just didn't start. So, yeah, I mean, I freaked out, and the boyfriend and his roommate had to, I was texting them at work, like, what do I do? I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I mean, I have a AAA card. I'm an adult. I should know how to deal with these things, but it just all went,
This whole thing has changed us all. But you know what? We're heading through it. We're heading past it, and we will get past it. We're all going to get past this. So I have a lot of hope today.
Well, that's good. Yeah. I mean, it depends on who you are, but I think that for a lot of people today, things seem to have taken a turn for the positive. So yay. All right. I will let you, take a little break and torture someone else here.
All right. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, Rebecca's just great, and I'll have to like go back through our episodes. I can't remember, but there's another story she has that's really good about Baba Yaga and Vasilisa. So it's like Russian, it's a spin on that Russian folktale, and a really badass rooster. So if I were to write that book, I mean, that story, it would probably be terrible, but she does it well. So, because Rebecca can do anything. So anyway, she's kind of like Sean Connery for writing. Okay. So now we've got Jeff Wood. Hi, Jeff.
Hi.
You've got your incredibly pretentious t-shirt on tonight.
I do have my incredibly pretentious t-shirt. Yes.
Yes. From Infinite Jest. We were talking about that before.
Yeah. You were.
Yeah. Such a hipster, Jeff.
I'm an ex-hipster.
Ex-hipster. You're a hipster in recovery.
Yes. Recovering hipster.
Okay. So what have you got for us tonight?
You asked me this before, and I'm not sure how to describe it. I don't really write like this anymore, but I'm really fond of these stories. These are the first ones I got published, and I just reformatted them. So they're on Amazon if anybody wants to look them up. But I guess they're just slice of life, Midwestern literary, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. You were telling me that earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I mean, whenever I hook up with randos these days and I start taking notes after the sexual encounter, I mean, I make a point of turning to them and saying, I don't write like this anymore. Meaning I don't submit these for publication. It's just for my own creepy reference. Now I just need a lock of your hair. Okay.
Fingernail clippings.
Yeah. Souvenirs. Souvenirs. All right. So yes, I will let you go forth and read before I get even weirder. Okay.
Okay. Well, thanks, Amy. So this is called Hard on Shoes. As I said before, it's one of my older stories. This was first published in the Grey Rock Review. It takes place in small town Iowa in the mid-'70s at the birth of the video game era. So Hard on Shoes. Whenever Eddie's mom saw that his shoelaces were untied, which was often, she would say, "Edward, tie your shoes." And if there was any larger lesson implied, it didn't stick. That was back when Eddie was a kid, of course, and Eddie wasn't really a kid anymore. And so Eddie and Pete were riding up the escalator really stoned over at the Merlehaim Mall in Des Moines, the big one. Eddie was turned around talking to Pete, riding the escalator backwards, laughing at this rent-a-cop who was riding the escalator down opposite from them, when one of his untied shoelaces got caught in the teeth of the tread between the steps. He didn't notice it right away, not until he stepped off the escalator and saw that his shoe was stuck. And suddenly his shoe was not only stuck, but getting sucked down in the machinery. And then the toe of his shoe was actually in the machinery. And Eddie was getting scared that the escalator would chew his foot off. Pete jumped over him and grabbed hold of his torso and pulled him like he was giving him the Heimlich. And Eddie finally escaped what looked to be certain death, or at least the loss of a limb, by pulling his foot out of his shoe. Pete dragged him to safety. The escalator kept on eating the shoe for a few moments, then shuddered and stopped. The people who were on the escalator walked to the second floor, and Eddie and Pete ripped the mutilated shoe out of the treads and threw it in the back seat of the car and drove away. It was really kind of funny, but maybe you had to be there. In the car on the way home, Eddie only had one working shoe, and his other foot was getting cold, so they smoked out of Pete's bag instead of Eddie's, and Eddie got to play whatever tapes he wanted. It was like he was sick or something, like having his tonsils out and being able to eat ice cream all day in bed. And Eddie was thinking that when he was a little kid, he was scared to get on the escalator or off, afraid he would get sucked in and eaten, afraid of the very thing that had just happened almost in real life. His dad had told him there was nothing to be scared of, that escalators didn't eat people, really. Eddie was thinking it was one more reason to distrust his dad. Before they went home, Eddie and Pete stopped at the bowling alley on First Street to drink Slurpees and play Space Invaders. Eddie wasn't too into video games, but Pete loved them, especially Space Invaders, because the machine played this bass line while you played the game, bump, bump, bump. And as you got deeper and deeper into the game, the bass line would go faster and faster. Now, according to Pete, the game was addictive because of the bass line, that as you played, your heart rate would match the timing of the bass. And so when the bass line speeded up, your heart speeded up too. It was like a drug, except it only cost $0.25. It was like a really cheap drug. Eddie made Pete quit playing after one game because he was standing in the bowling alley with only one shoe and was worried people were staring at him. And, well, because his foot was getting cold. Pete dropped Eddie and his mutilated shoe off at home. Pete threw the shoe into the back of his closet and went to bed and dreamed about tornadoes. The dream started out cool enough, as it always did. Eddie was in a field on the edge of town, and there was this huge storm over the town, this huge cloud, and Eddie was walking towards the storm, not away from it. Then a funnel slid out from under the clouds like a snake and touched ground, hit pay dirt, and then there was a second funnel and a third, and soon the air was filled with twisting black columns of wind, big weather everywhere. Eddie lifted up his arms to it in acknowledgement until the storm was not only in front of him, but all around him as well. He felt this incredible power in his arms. Then the funnel clouds went away, slid back into the sky, and that's when the dream fell apart. It began to rain. The field Eddie was walking in turned to mud. And then it was just the same tired old dream he'd had before hundreds of times, a dream that everybody knew, a dream he shared with the world. He was trying to get somewhere, and his feet kept getting stuck. He couldn't move fast enough. The mud was sucking him down, holding him by the shoes, refusing to let him go. He woke up exhausted and disappointed. Eddie had to wear dress shoes to school the next day. They looked wrong with jeans and a t-shirt, but they were the only other pair of shoes he had. Shoes did keep him out of PE class, which was a good thing. The gym floor had some sort of special space-age coating on it to make it a better place to play basketball, but the coating was fragile. It would only accept sneakers. Street shoes apparently marred it for life. School rules prohibited the wearing of anything but tennis shoes there. Eddie told the PE coach about his mishap at the mall, how he had ruined his only pair of sneakers, and the coach wrote him out a hall pass. And Eddie spent the spent the hour on the roof of the school, behind the air conditioner, a place nobody knew about, not even Pete. He thought about his dream up there. He looked for tornadoes, scanned the skies, but he didn't see any. After school, Helen and Nancy had plans to drive to Polk City. There was a bar there that didn't check IDs. Eddie tagged along. It was a pretty boring bar full of old men, a lousy jukebox, but every other place Eddie thought to go to seemed boring as well. At least in Polk City, they could be bored together. They had 4 beers during happy hour and played weird old man songs on the jukebox. Cattle Call, Jack of Diamonds, Do You Know the Way to San Jose? Do you? At 6, when happy hour was over, they were out of money, so they drove back to town. Eddie didn't want to go home, but Helen and Nancy were going home for supper, so Eddie decided to go home too. His mom stopped him at the door. He was surprised to find her in the living room. She looked down at his feet, and so Eddie looked down too and saw his dress shoes were all scuffed up. Mom was not happy about this. Shoes were expensive. She asked him what had happened to his tennis shoes. He didn't want to upset her. He said he'd gotten bored with them and put on dress shoes for a change of pace. Eddie's dad walked into the living room at that point and told him something about the cost of shoes and a working man's wage that Eddie didn't pay much attention to, certainly not enough to understand. They ate supper in silence. After supper, Eddie watched TV in his room. Something had happened to Eddie's mom. His dad hadn't noticed, or was at least pretending he hadn't noticed. It started after she quit her job as a checker over at the Hy-Vee. Or maybe it happened before that, this thing. Maybe it was the reason she quit, and Eddie only found out about it because without a job, she was home all day, and so he saw her more often. Her first unemployed afternoon was spent on the living room couch, just sitting there with the TV on. Eddie had a feeling what would happen next. She spent every afternoon sitting on the couch, watching TV for about 2 weeks. Then she spent her mornings there too. The sitting position gradually turned into a lying position, sometimes with the TV on, sometimes off. It didn't seem to matter. If it was on, she didn't seem to be watching it. She would just lie there with her arms splayed across her forehead. After a few months, she moved upstairs. Instead of lying on the living room couch, she was lying on her bed. She began to make excuses that would allow her to stay home. She was sick. It was raining. She was waiting for a call. Eventually, she stopped bothering to come up with excuses. She spent entire days upstairs in bed. She said she read books up there, but she always seemed to be reading the same book. Eddie suspected she just stared at the pages or maybe just stared at the walls. She kept the door to the bedroom open at first. She cried sometimes. Maybe it was a sad book. The next morning before school, Eddie walked into the kitchen with his dress shoes on, and his dad made him go upstairs to put on his sneakers. He stood in his room for the amount of time he figured it would take to change shoes, then left for school through the front door before his dad could see them. On the way to school, he saw a pair of tennis shoes with the shoestrings tied together, hanging from a telephone wire. There were similar pairs of shoes all over town, hanging from telephone wires, electrical lines, street lamps, traffic lights. It was a rite of passage. Big kids stole gym shoes from little kids and tied the shoestrings together and threw them up to a place where they could never be gotten down again. Some of the pairs of shoes had been up there for years. He had a bad day at school, though for no particular reason, just a bunch of little reasons added together. Pete and Nancy skipped. Helen and Juliet were there, but they were involved in some sort of girl thing, talking to each other in quiet voices in front of their lockers between classes. Eddie left them alone. Everybody left Eddie alone. At lunch, some kid threw up, and Eddie couldn't bring himself to eat because of the smell. When lunch was over, Eddie couldn't bring himself to go to When lunch was over, Eddie couldn't bring himself to show up at composition class either because there was a paper due that Eddie didn't write. He went back up on the roof. It was a cloudy day, but there were no storms in sight. With nothing happening in the sky, Eddie looked at his shoes. They had tar on them. He had stepped in tar. There was tar on the roof, and he had stepped in it, in his dress shoes. He went to science class, the last class of the day. The teacher was talking about planets and moons, orbits and escape velocities, and it was all actually pretty interesting to Eddie, but it only lasted an hour and then it was over. School was over, and Eddie was wondering what to do next, how to fill the afternoon. Going home was out. There was nothing to do there. It would just give his parents that much more time to notice he had ruined his dress shoes, making the discovery of the destroyed sneaker inevitable. He wasn't even sure why he was hiding the sneaker from them. He'd get a lecture, but he'd gotten lectures before. Pete was at the bowling alley with Nancy, who was playing Space Invaders again. Nancy thought it was a stupid game and said so to Eddie while they watched Pete play. She said it was a game you could never win. It didn't matter how many space monsters you killed. They kept coming. There were always more, snaking out of the sky to attack you. Eddie watched Pete play, his body twitching every time he got hit, every time he squeezed off a shot, his head nodding with the baseline, his feet dancing. Nancy didn't understand. They left Pete to his game and walked out into the parking lot to get a smoke. When they were done, Nancy went back into the bowling alley. Eddie went home. Nothing in the sky on the walk home, just some stars. Eddie was looking for a storm, even a small one, some rain, a little wind, thunder. It was the right season for it. Every season without fail, there would be at least a half a dozen tornado watches. It was a ritual of his childhood. Someone on TV would announce it, and Eddie would go down to the end of the driveway and wait for something to happen. Sometimes something did happen, but Eddie never got to see it. Because whenever somebody spotted a tornado, whenever the watch changed to a warning, whenever the storm siren started to go off around town, his parents would come get him and drag him down into the basement for his own safety. They would only let him watch when there wasn't anything to see. Eddie's mom was in the living room when he got home. She was sitting in an old wooden chair against the far wall. The whole living room was stretched out between them, a sea, what seemed like miles of cheap shag carpeting. Eddie's mom was looking down in her lap. She was crying. In her lap was Eddie's ripped up tennis shoe. She was holding it like she was holding a baby. The toe of the shoe was gone, and there was a long tear in the canvas along the side. She must have found it in the back of the closet and dragged it out so she could confront him with it. Eddie didn't know why she was crying. It could have been because he lied to her, didn't tell her about getting the shoe ruined. It could have been because she was worrying about money to pay for a new pair. They could have been anything. She always said he was hard on shoes. She had to keep buying new ones. Eddie wanted to tell her she had it wrong. He hadn't ripped up the shoe on purpose. It just happened. He wanted to tell her that he wanted to tell her he just wore the shoes, just lived with them, that it wasn't him, it was life. Life was hard on shoes. And that's the end. Thanks.
Yes, life was hard on shoes for sure.
Life is hard on shoes.
I agree. All right. Well, that was awesome. And
Thank
oh yeah, we've got a few people, commenting on the throwback of, Space Invaders. All right.
Oh, yeah.
So let's see. I guess. All right, Jeff, I will let you go for now. And I'm going to pick on Matt now. So, okay. Hi, Matt.
Good evening.
Good evening. So is your daughter helping you out tonight, or is it just you tonight?
No, I have to read the ladies' dialogue as well, but
Okay. Well, it'll get you in touch with your feminine side,
no comment.
All right. All right. Well, take it away, Matt.
Okay, this is a short story. I keep changing the title. Right now it's called The Mother of Whales. And it begins with a question. How human are whales? That's what I wonder as I look through the wire-reinforced window of the psych ward. As chief scientist and assistant director of Seattle's Marine Mammal Monitoring Institute, 3M to one and all, I certainly had some idea. The Pacific orcas we were following, called S-Pod, were southern residents who specialized in hunting salmon. Considering all the stress we humans pile on them, they were a pretty collegial bunch for killer whales. People loved them, or said they did. But something was wrong with S-Pod. I'd been lobbying to get better protection after 2 were hit by boats last year. You'd think something that fast and smart wouldn't get hit, but it can. And I brought it up at the Senate committee hearing in Washington State's boringly named Legislative House. After the pleasantries of hearing myself introduced as the distinguished Dr. Jerry Ann Warner, well, we got down to facts. S-Pod's behavior is less and less normal, I told them. They're getting hit by morons who've taken to Miami-style 50-knot pleasure boats. I clicked through some pictures on the screen behind me of boats, and damaged orcas. Maybe they've never seen that kind of boat before and they don't detect it in time. It doesn't help they're all debilitated. We know what the dams and fishing have done to the salmon supply. You had the Fed's new report on that. Out of 22 whales in the last year, 2 have been hit, 1 died of disease, and 2 have just disappeared. There's 1 healthy calf. They're supposed to be the most protected marine mammal in the world, and we are not protecting them. The hearing chair, Senator Deb Ellis, a woman who I knew understood the basics, responded, Dr. Walker, we've done our best to balance boating and fishing in the ecosystem. We might need to make some more tweaks, but what I don't understand is the whale's decision-making. If they're hungry and getting hurt here, why don't animals that smart have the sense to move? Perfect question. Resident pods usually don't migrate, I said. That's why they call them residents. A few people chuckled. But with S-Pod, they won't leave whale S-19. She's their matriarch. We call her Madre. She's still the glue that holds them together. And she won't move because she looks like this. I hit the clicker again and a couple of people gasped. S-19 looked like hell. You could count her ribs. There was a chunk missing from the top of her dorsal, and one image showed a white propeller scar across her back. I left each picture up long enough to make sure the TV cameras covering the hearing got a good shot. Then I went to an image of S-19's milky left eye and left it up. The skin around it showed a scar and the gray-pink lesions of infections. The pics were 2 weeks old, but I'd saved them for this hearing for maximum impact. She's about 90 years old, I said. She could have another decade as the matriarch, but obviously that's not going to happen. We need to clear the inshore corridor that we discussed, enforce the hell out of the boating restrictions. We can expand the no fishing zones and dates, not much, just some in the right places, and give S-Pod some chance of survival. Senator McCosker, a whip-thin man with the scarred hands of a fisherman, spoke. Doctor, haven't we cut back enough? We've crippled some fishermen with the limits we have now. I know killer whale pods are families, and I feel bad for your S-19 in their group. Nobody wants to hurt them. But bluntly put, they're not the only pod. I know for a fact there are at least 3 other healthy pods around here because fishermen and whale watching boats spot them all the time. Orcas aren't in any danger that I can see. There are no healthy pods, just less damaged ones, I said. Don't tell L-Pod they're fine. Doctor, there's a solution, McCosker shot back. We need to reduce the damn seal population, and then there's enough fish for everyone. Senator Ellis shook her head at him. Senator McCosker, we all know what you think, and we all know the federal law saying we can't do it. Now, save our sisters, save our sisters, save our sisters of the sea. 2 women from the small audience section were now in the aisle, chanting and waving oversized orca-printed scarves. Senator Ellis, with a loud sigh, slapped her gavel down. Security, please remove. You're ignorant, the loudest woman shouted in a well-practiced foghorn of a voice. These are spiritual brothers and sisters. They feel as we feel. They're scared. They're sacred. They have a higher consciousness we'll never know. All the earth is connected and the earth weeps. The security guys knew the drill and the women were muscled without too much fuss out of the room. After a calmer but unsatisfying exchange, I stalked out. I'd gotten the message across but hadn't secured any commitment to action. Casey Baker, my ecologist writer friend, and a 3M volunteer who'd come with me for moral support, fell in step beside me. These women we interrupted, do they help or hurt? She asked. They want to help, I said. They never give up, but they hurt. Their mystic Jedi Force crap is going to be what's on Twitter and Instagram and the evening news, not the state of S-19. Hey, I tensed to hear someone running after us. Then I recognized another friend under a Sierra Club cap. Hey, Dave, got more bad news for me? Dave Moore's eyes went flat. Yeah, I do. S-14 just sank a sailboat. My heart stopped. 14? Blockhead? What the hell, they ran over him? More complicated, Dave said. Brace yourself. He pointed at a small but noisy knot of reporters approaching me the way sharks hurl themselves at chum. Dr. Walker, what do you think of the sinking? Came the first question. I'm sure it was an accident, I said, but I was looking at Dave and he was shaking his head emphatically. Jerry, a reporter I knew, a curly-haired TV veteran named Javi, was holding up a phone and running a video. The DFW patrol drone caught this, and it leaked like 5 seconds later. Nobody died, but look. It wasn't a close shot, but there was no escaping it. Blockhead rammed the vessel at about a 40-degree angle. The boat, about 18 feet long, reeled and rolled to port and only partway back as water poured in the smashed fiberglass hull. The orca twisted its head at the last moment, and a teenager's right arm, reaching out, stupidly, but it happens a lot, to pet him, was yanked back, and it was red. I've never felt the color drain out of my own face before. He didn't bite. Orcas don't bite people ever. More questions pelted me from every direction. Dr. Walker, it looks like you bit the boy. What do you think happened? Should the orca be destroyed? Should people stay out of the water? Do orcas ever turn into man killers? This is like that old movie, isn't it? I knew the movie, Orca, a stunningly awful 1970s Jaws ripoff. Who the hell remembered that piece of crap? I tried to breathe. Casey, an ex-rugby player half a foot taller than me, used her body as a shield to push back the mini-mob and give me some room. Listen, I yelled in my best outdoor voice. Do not jump to conclusions. We don't know what happened or why. The orca might have been sick or hurt. This is not normal. We need to investigate. Blockhead was the popular favorite of S-Pod. He liked to swim right up side boats and watch them. I could swear he posed for pictures. This made no sense. You just said they were starving. Are they eating people? No more comment. No comment. Eventually, we fended them off, piled into Casey's battered Honda Pilot, and hauled ass for 3M in Ballard. I raced through the Institute doors into a miniature bedlam. The three people working there were at all the tracking and video desks and talking nonstop. The drone video was playing on the big screen in slow motion. I think my eyes goggled. There was no question. It was an attack. And while I didn't think Blockhead shredded the kid's arm on purpose, he didn't try to avoid it. Jerry, I was very vaguely aware our director, Mike Edenshaw, was tugging at my arm. Jerry, focus. There's more going on. I looked into his dark, deep, Haida eyes. He was crying. What? Mike, what? We've lost Madre. Lost? What do you mean? Jerry, Madre just washed up on Fort Lawton Beach. She's dead. Oh, God, dead of what? Can't tell yet, but you know how she looked. Age, injuries, whatever. Looks like she drifted a while, probably died yesterday. Madre, I whispered. Older cetologists always told newbies not to get hung up on whales' names, to use the numbers, to keep a little distance. Few of us could do it. I'd never tried. I sought the comfort of my favorite chair, parked at the giant desk where our satellite tracking gear was piled, and a screen showed me the 3D map of the local waters. We had Argos satellite tags on 3 of the S-Pod whales. The yellow dots representing them clustered just off the shore where S-19 was, I knew, surrounded by local wildlife people and Coast Guard and probably half of Seattle. Anyone seen Blockhead since the collision? I asked. Yeah, we lucked out, Dave said. One of our guys put a drone up in the right spot. He handed his phone to our tech genius, Lauren, who nodded at it. Piece of cake. That was what Lauren said to any request, large or small. She took 3 seconds to sync it to the monitor. An overhead scene appeared. It was maybe half a mile offshore, and we could see 5 orcas milling around. S-14's squarish head wasn't hard to pick out. As anthropomorphic as it sounds, we know orcas mourn the dead, and that's what she was doing. The video was showing the beach now. S-19 with the protruding ribs looked like the skeleton of a beached and broken boat. There was a good cordon around her, keeping the crowd back. I called everyone I knew, lighting up Marine Mammal Study Network from here to the Salish Sea, to Portland, to our funders at NOAA in D.C. Labs at Cascadia, San Diego, and Oregon State were calling me, along with seemingly every human who'd ever seen a whale. The screens jammed up with video conferences. I took as many science calls as I could, with one result. Even a Spanish colleague who'd investigated a boat collision episode in 2020 was as stunned and puzzled as we were. When there was a pause, I did short, although I hope not curt, video interviews with 2 networks, consigning the rest to the bilges until we had more information. The next round hit us just after 10 in the morning. Jerry, Mike said, we've got another collision. I could only stare. In precise navigational talk, about 15 miles out that way, he said, pointing northwest toward Whidbey Island. Tom's out in the launch now. I think it's S-11. She got hit by the Sea Star. Sea Star was the biggest and most opulent of the whale watching boats. I knew her skipper, Troy, was a good man who followed the rules. As evidence of that, he was already ringing my cell phone. Quiet, I yelled at everyone around me. Troy, what happened? Jerry, my God, I'm so sorry. We're where we're supposed to be. Our bow lookout, Pittman, called her out just a second before we hit. You know we keep the legal distances, and if they pop up close, they always shear off. She didn't. Pittman said it looked like she knew we were there and didn't care. Still mourning S-19, I said. I guess she was rudderless. Is she dead? Not sure. She went under and we haven't spotted her again. That big one with the tall fin, catfish, he was swimming around like he was looking for her. S4, catfish, was the son of S-19. He was about 55, I knew. Orca family bonds are for life. Keep courting as long as you can. I'm coming out. Mike, have Tom come in to refuel and pick me up. We've got to see for ourselves. You're more use in the command post, he said. Then he paused, his lips pressed hard together. Actually, maybe it's better if you're hard to reach for a little while. What haven't you told me? Your almost ex-husband called saying he wanted to support you. We both knew Jerry had never supported anything but the ecology students he was teaching/hitting on. It was why he didn't have my cell number. Please tell me you told him where to get off. Mike nodded. I did exactly what you have asked me to do. I called him every swear word in English and Haida, and I was starting over in Tlingit when he hung up. Bastard just piggybacking on this to get on TV or something. All the more reason to be at sea a few hours. Tom picked me up in the launch. Launch was a modest name for the boat the sports team owner had donated when he bought something exactly 8.5 times longer. The Siren would have been a small cabin cruiser, but for the fact the cabin was removable canvas versus solid. I, David, and Casey joined Tom Solitis in a room with room to spare, video and still cameras and our drones fit. Tom opened up the twin inboard motors and the old boat he lovingly kept ship-shape headed out. Escaping the media was a pipe dream. A flotilla the size of the Pacific Fleet had gathered off S-19's resting place, and everyone who saw our logo on the Siren immediately began crowding close, holding up phones, shouting questions. Tom, we can't do any good here. Head out towards Sea Star. Only 10 minutes later, I had a fin in the binoculars. I see catfish, he said. He's with someone, but it's not 19. I think it's wavy. S7, wavy for the uneven posterior edge of her dorsal, was S19's granddaughter. There's hat tip too, Casey said, pointing to a dorsal with a little flop over at the top. Hell, there's S10, I think. Got one more astern, David said. They're regrouping or something. I turned up the hydrophone. There was a cacophony of whistles, creaks, click trains, and so many other orca sounds. I've heard them all before, but they were mixed in a way I hadn't heard, giving a concert of unquestionable yet indecipherable meaning. The afternoon blurred, recording everything we could. Checking out the bow of the Sea Star, which was crunched in a bit. I knew Troy wasn't speeding, but they hit hard. Trying to search in spirals around the collision site and using our drone to look for S11. Hampered by the need to dodge boats full of journalists, unofficial journalists, bloggers, and just plain folks. Boats ignoring the legal standoff distances from the whales as two Department of Fish and Wildlife boats tried to separate them. Logging bearings and directions. Swearing at a TV news crew helicopter dipping way too low for safety. Swearing harder at a Raven-sized drone someone actually kept 10 feet over our heads until Casey nailed it with a well-thrown steel thermos. And finally, deciding we could do no more, letting Tom turn Siren for home. I gave a half dozen more interviews by video and teleconference from 3M, trying to answer the unanswerable. There aren't that many cetologists working full-time on orcas, and we all know each other. I was running out of colleagues to query, and no one had an explanation for this multi-orca pileup. Javi, on the last interview, asked, "What's next?" I didn't even try to answer that one. Nearing midnight, I finally lay down on one of the cots jammed in the storage room. Everyone was crying, and no one was embarrassed about it. We'd followed, championed, and loved S-Pod for 23 years. Since graduating college 18 years ago, I'd hardly done anything except study this pod. They were family. Casey took the cot next to mine, and Dave ignored my efforts to order him home. The last thing I remember before sleep was putting my hand on Casey's shoulder as she took her turn crying, and David's fingers entwining with mine as he took a chair to read his phone. We were family too. Oblivion didn't last nearly long enough. The door blasted open, or so it seemed to me. It was Mike. Jerry, Captain Anna for you on the landline. Anna was pretty informal for the Coast Guard Station Seattle commander, but we'd been to college together. I took back my chair and realized I hadn't eaten in 18 hours. I stuck one hand in the snack box as I took the call. Jerry, this is nuts, Anna said. That kid who got hurt is on every channel, and some yahoos with guns went out looking for orchids. We arrested 2 guys who shot catfish. Don't know how he is. They raked him with a goddamn AR-15. Have your folks heard of anybody seeing him? I asked the question. No one had. Anna continued, Jerry, there's an orca ashore at House Beach. Floppy dorsal fin. Sea Life Response Lab is already there to refloat him, but he's really jammed himself up. What the hell's going on? They're leaderless, confused, depressed, bummed out. I asked about the whales, not you. I know this is shit for you, but I need scientist Jerry now. Okay, I said, gobbling gummy worms for breakfast. Scientist Jerry doesn't have a clue. We've seen pods lose their matriarchs. They mourn, they mill around a while, but they don't lose it completely. That gathering we saw yesterday afternoon, I thought was about getting their act together. I expected S12 to slide into the matriarch role, but we haven't seen her. I saw Mike pointing at the tracking screen. There were still 3 dots from trackers, but one, hat tips, was ashore, and 2 were scattered far apart. The pink sound clouds that indicated boat noise blended into a near solid mass. 7 a.m., and you could probably walk across the sound on the boats. Jerry, Annie said, the President of the United States personally wants me to go out and kill S-14. Get me some explanation, anything. Trying. God, we're trying. I had to calm down. I ate a candy bar and drank some water. Good cue. Then I grabbed a few minutes of watching the dawn from our relatively secluded deck on the water side. I slowed my breathing, bringing in the yoga tricks. Inhale slowly. Imagine you're doing it through your left hand. The oxygen spreads through you, brings you calm. Hold it, hold it. Gently exhale through your right hand. A red-headed figure in jeans and tie-dye nimbly vaulted the rail to scare the hell out of me. It was the woman who had been most vocal in the hearing. Dr. Walker, I'm Susanna Skies. I know who you are. I'm not interested in your new age energy force crap and your trespassing. Please, listen. Don't think because we see the oneness that we reject the science. I've read your book and every one of your papers. I know you know how smart, how caring they are. And they've stopped being smart. They've stopped caring. They're doing things that get them hurt, things that get them hunted. An Arctic-level chill went through me. I turned and lunged inside, slamming the door without another word to her. Mike, give me a recap on all the whales now. Mike looked at a notebook. Okay, S-19, Madre. Dead, exact cause TBD. S-14, Blockhead. Attacked boat, being hunted. S-11, Eowyn. Hit by Sea Star, presumed dead. S-4, Catfish. Shot, presumed dead or dying. S-9, Hat Tip. Beached. Cause TBD. S-12, Grumble. Nobody's seen her. S-7, Wavy. Our newest problem. We had her about an hour ago, but she vanished. She either got rid of her tag somehow, or she's staying way under more than we've ever seen. Every name, every number hit me like a punch in the gut. I closed my eyes to keep the tears in. Jerry, what? When they gathered yesterday, I breathed. Damn it to hell. 20 years studying them, and they're more human than we ever thought. Huh? They weren't getting their act together. They were making a suicide pact. Oh, come on. They can't be. Animals don't do that. They can't. I knew what he was thinking. Captive cetaceans occasionally lost their minds and rammed the walls, but this was incomprehensible. Lauren waved her hand at me. Coast Guard, another S-Pod whale just got hit. I locked eyes with Mike. They can do that. They are doing that. That's the story. That's why I ended up in here on a 48-hour hold, because I'd had some kind of breakdown I don't remember, and Mike thought I might have joined S-Pod's compact. He might have been right, but I pulled it together for the shrink, and I just have 3 hours left here. Then the fight starts over. That's it.
All right. Yay. So thank you, Matt. And I guess I will just now bring Jeffe on here. So, hi, Jeffe.
Hello.
Sorry we're keeping you up a little bit, probably past all of our bedtime. I mean,
The pumpkin hour.
yeah, you're very pretty. I'm sure that, you get a lot of beauty sleep. So I'm sorry about that. So I don't know. You are like always the person that I associate with, good writer girlfriends, because I remember seeing you with Dorinda Jones at Book Bar, and they said it was like a package deal, like you two had to come at the same time.
Well, we drove up from New Mexico together and the timing worked out, but we are besties. It's true. She's a good friend.
It was so sweet. That was like the best event. It was so much fun. And and I remember I got 11th grave in Moonlight that night. It was actually the Trouble with 12th Grave that she was reading from. And then that was the day that I got The Shift of the Tide.
Oh, I love that cover.
Yeah, it's such a pretty cover. So, yeah. So, yeah. And I don't know, you have a Rita Award too. I was like, this is amazing.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I have it here behind me. It's my shiny golden idol.
Oh, nice. Wow. That's life goals right there, to just have your shinies.
That's right. I can look at it when I start thinking I'm a fraud. It's like, well, somebody gave me a trophy.
Exactly. It's like, it's good to have those reminders that it's like, okay, yes, what I do actually entertains people and makes people happy. I mean, that's great. And, some people say I have skills. I have to remind myself of this all the time. And
we all do.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, some days it definitely takes more like pumping yourself up for sure.
Okay.
So you have a new book coming out next Tuesday?
Monday. It's coming out Monday because this one's self-published. So I got to pick the day. But it's called The Golden Gryphon and the Bear Prince.
Cool.
And I'm going to read a part from near the middle of the book. And this chapter is from the point of view of a woman who is a shapeshifter, and she's able to take the form of a griffin. And she's with a group of her sort of friends and cousins, and they've all gone on this quest, as one does. And her deal is that she's promiscuous. She's a lover of all. But the one person she hasn't been able to win is the Prince Aster, who is saving himself for marriage. And she's been working on him. Yeah, he's noble. He's like totally noble and charming. So saving himself for marriage, which is not to her. She is not on the list of approved princesses. So, this section that I'm reading will start with where she is a griffin and they're reconnoitering a problem, a monster.
Sounds very interesting. This also sounds like the kind of guy I totally would have gone after in high school. So,
Right, because they're just so good, you have to corrupt them, right?
yeah, I can totally relate. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, Jeffe, take it away.
All righty, thank you. It was almost peaceful, circling above the clouds in the golden sunshine. Lena, a soft and quiet weight on her back. Yes, her wings were getting a little tired. She wasn't accustomed to carrying any weight at all, and now regretted ignoring her father's advice to train more. But even with the strain of staying aloft at that height, being up there in the clean air was so much better than that turmoil below. She'd been glad enough of Astor's assignment that she'd carry Lena because it spared her the continuing embarrassment of how she had acted like a frightened gruntling, scurrying to safety with her metaphorical tail between her legs. Good thing the peregrine form couldn't contort that way, or she might have done it literally. Even more humiliating, she had flung herself into Astor's arms, clinging to him like a limpet, and it hadn't been sexually motivated at all. After what she had seen and felt, sex was the last thing on her mind, and all she had wanted from Astor's gorgeously muscled body was comfort, which he had offered, and she had sucked up like a babe with a bottle of warm milk. What was wrong with her? All right, Lena. All right, Zeph, Lena said. I think I've got an idea what's going on here, but I need to convene with Nilly. Can you take us down? Zeph clacked her beak in agreement, steeling herself not to be such a coward, and folded her wings, diving into the clouds. She hadn't changed her mind that they needed to help those people down there, but conviction didn't make one brave, it turned out. Lena whooped with excitement as they dropped, which bolstered Zeph's spirits. Taking someone flying for the first time brought a special pleasure that Zeph hadn't expected. Of course, flying was among her earliest memories, since her first form was winged, and somehow she had never thought about how Lena had never experienced it. From the first moments of their takeoff, Zeph not at all sure she'd be able to keep from crashing. Lena had sung out with a joy that flying was even better than surfing. A strong statement from Lena, and one that heartened Zeph enough to find the power in her body to pump her wings and compensate for the ungainly weight. They burst through the clouds into a dismal scene. The malevolent fog swirled over the entire city of Ginneke, which filled the triangle of land formed by the joining of the Grace and Phoenix rivers. The ferry boats that plied the two rivers above the confluence were all docked on the far banks, people thronging the shores, pointing at the bizarre sight in the town. Some people were trying to swim to the other shore, but struggled as if against a mighty current that had nothing to do with the flow of the rivers. Some even moved backward, flailing against the invisible pull to no avail. Hopefully no one would be paying attention to the sight of a Gryphon in the sky, or would assume that she was just another mishmash monster, galling as that was. There's Stella, Lena shouted, pointing alongside Zeph's neck to the black jaguar climbing onto a deserted pier and vigorously shaking herself dry. Can you put us down there? Not sure if that was the best idea, Zeph dove for the spot. So far, everyone seemed to be unharmed. Was the malicious force attacking only the townsfolk? Astor and Rye, both in bear form, were still swimming toward a set of piers on the opposite side of town. With her sharp Gryphon eyes, Zeph picked out Jen, galloping at full speed down the deserted trade road that led to town from the north, Jack low on her back. Only Stella so far had physically entered the town itself, where the wrongness was most intense. She and Lena would be next. I'm not interested in being a dead hero, she thought to herself, echoing Rye's sentiment. It wasn't a noble one, not like pretty much everything that came out of Astor's mouth, but she sympathized with Rye's cynical take. She hit the planks of the wooden pier harder than she meant to, not quite compensating for the extra weight, and galloped a distance to scrub off speed and impact, Stella loping into a sprint alongside them. When Zeph pulled to a halt, panting with the effort, Lena immediately jumped off. "Can you stay in this form to defend us?" she asked. "I don't think anyone's around to see you, but you could switch to another fighting form, especially if you need to shift to recover." Zeph shook her head and stationed herself between Lena and Stella, who had shifted to human form at Lena's signal, and the boiling fog consuming the town. She positioned herself so she could see both of her friends and the town, keeping her keen ears sharp for the sounds coming from the water behind them, just in case. It would be good to shift and restore herself, but she also wanted to be ready for anything. And the advantage of the Gryphon form was that she had multiple methods of defense: beak, talons, and the whip-like tail. Even her powerful wings worked to thrust attackers away. She might be a monster to some, but she was a monster very good at killing. Lena and Stella were holding hands and saying a chant together, something Zeph had never seen them do before. Could be they were revealing arcane sorceress secrets under pressure, or they'd recently learned the method, maybe from Andy at Ordnung that night, or they were making up something on the fly. Whichever it was, Zeph prayed to Morano to clear their path because trouble was coming their way. She clacked her beak in warning, but the sorceresses didn't respond. An immense form began to take shape as it emerged from the amorphous cloud. A grinning head sat atop a spindly neck that shouldn't be able to support the weight of that misshapen globe. Mostly featureless, the face consisted mainly of two enormous dark eyes and a gaping mouth. Glowing chalk white, the hugely tall figure was roughly human-shaped, but there its connection to humanity ended. The gangly body moved with disjointed and eerie grace, the long limbs clearly made of something other than flesh. Stone, perhaps. And as Zeph watched, it cocked its head almost curiously at a group of actual humans fleeing before it. With ease, it plucked up two of the people, unperturbed by their struggles and wildly stabbing weapons. One fired an arrow at the thing's face and it bounced off harmlessly. The monster held the two flailing humans up, examined them, then casually bit the heads off both. Then it mashed the mangled bodies together, a putrid green glow of magic shining briefly. The monster smiled in pleasure and set its creation down, clapping merrily as the floundering amalgam ran in panicked circles, four arms waving helplessly. Though the Gryphon tended to be fierce and less subject to sentiment in general, Zeph's gorge rose, and her heart hurt for the people who screamed and wailed, running after their erstwhile loved ones. Still alive for the moment, but beyond recovery. The giant, apparently bored, looked around for new prey and took a step toward the pier. Zeph clacked another warning. The sorceresses, oblivious, no longer chanting, but with magic swirling densely in the air around them. Either Zeph herself or the building magic caught the giant's attention. It stared across the distance at her, then pointed like a little kid and giggled. The sound scratched over Zeph's keen ears, and she had to fight not to panic again and flee. She leaned into the Gryphon's natural ferocity, the hot-blooded territoriality that had made Zir so unsuitable for kingship. In this case, that worked in her favor, and she was far more capable of holding her ground than the skittish peregrine had been. The giant was definitely focused on them, gliding in their direction with that uncanny light grace, and with no regard for a row of pretty cottages arranged on the bank directly in its path. One bone-like foot kicked a cottage, and it burst like a balloon, spilling screaming children like ants. Their scurrying caught the giant's attention, and it crouched to watch with gleeful fascination. A lone woman ran up, bow in hand, placing herself between the monster and the fleeing children, and she took the stance of an experienced archer. Though her hair was dark and curly, she could otherwise be Zeph's mother, Karen. She might come close to Karen's skill, too, the way she began smoothly firing arrows at the monster's eyes. So rapidly there was no discernible pause between release and knocking a new arrow. She hit her mark every time, too, the arrows flying cleanly into the open orbits of the eye cavities and seeming to disappear into the void within. Though the giant seemed to be using those eyes to see, judging by its behavior, they clearly were no more made of living flesh than the rest of it. The giant rubbed the hole where its nose would be, snorting as if something tickled. Then it lowered its spindly hand, cocked its spidery fingers like a kid shooting marbles, and flicked the archer into the river. The woman sailed limply, falling like a rock and sinking, and everything in Zeph wanted to fly to her assistance, to drag her out of the water. But she couldn't leave Lena and Stella unprotected. The archer's bow popped up, floating lazily in the red clay current, and Zeph began praying to Morano for assistance. If they had a chance to stop this thing, it had to be sorcery. The archer had at least bought time for the escaping children because they had all disappeared from sight. The giant looked around, picked up a couple of cottages off their foundations, and shook them, looking disappointed when no more scurrying distractions emerged. Zeph saw the moment the monster remembered her, and the sorceresses broiling their attractive magic, who were no more cognizant of the danger than before. Maybe less so, with the zing of magic in the air like lightning poised to strike. What would she do if the giant reached them? Push the pair of them into the water? She couldn't lift them onto her back, and even if she could only carry one at a time. If she could only take dragon form, it would solve all her problems. She could incinerate that giant to ash, pluck up her friends and her front talons and take them back to the safety of Ordnung's walls in no time. But she didn't have dragon form, and likely never would. She did have the power of the Gryphon, however, and she would have to use every bit of that form's ability to fight the giant, and hope. But that would mean leaving the oblivious sorceresses completely undefended. Aster had ordered her to defend Lena at all costs. But didn't that mean figuring out the best way to protect her? This being a soldier thing was terrible. She was no good at it. The giant was sniffing the air, then zeroed in on her and smiled. Morano, I know I am not a devoted acolyte or your chosen, but now would be an excellent time to convince me. Instead of standing again, the giant dropped onto hands and knees, crawling forward as it advanced on her. And it morphed as it moved, limbs becoming leonine, tipped with talons, a long whip-like tail growing into the sky, wings spreading, face contorting into a rough approximation of her own eagle's head and curved beak. Charming. It wasn't a shapeshifter, not like the Tala, who instantly took on a new shape as if swapping it out from another intangible realm, but more like a chameleon, taking on the image of something that intrigued it. By the time it stepped onto the pier, the monster looked like a child's modeling clay version of a Gryphon, and easily 5 times her height. The sorceresses still hadn't moved, and Zeph couldn't risk the giant coming close to Lena and Stella. Zeph charged. With a sharp-edged lion's roar, she galloped at full speed down the pier. More cottages, shops, and vendors' stalls filled the middle section of the pier, so Zeph picked the side away from where Lena and Stella stood at the end, keeping the giant's gaze on her, with the buildings between its line of sight and her friends. Hopefully it couldn't just look over the top of the buildings from its soaring height. Morano, she really hoped she wasn't sacrificing herself for them, especially so early in the quest, and without realizing her goal of betting Aster. I am not interested in being a dead hero. Well, she wouldn't be. She could do this. Racing at her top speed, she also hoped the giant wouldn't realize that she could fly. It crouched down like a playful cat, rump in the air and tail lashing as if it would pounce. Closer. Just a little closer. This was like the Tala children's game of I Eat You, where the one able to take the form that did the most damage won, and she had no intention of losing. Closer. Closer. The giant leapt, front talons outstretched to pin her like an unlucky mouse. She jagged to the side and poured speed into a powerful leap. Her wings screamed, not built to take her heavy lion's body straight up into the air like that. But she pulled out enough lift to evade those descending talons, and with perfect timing, so the monster plowed beak first into the pier. Splintering wooden planks, shredded awnings, and countless colorful moss-backed things flew through the air. The pier creaked, groaned mightily, and the pylons beneath the giant snapped under the stress. The whole length tilted, debris pounding the monster's beaked face. A small black body zipped around her head, cawing furiously. Rye, back in raven form. He flew away, zooming toward Lena and Stella. Relief washed through Jeffe like cool water. Rye would protect them. The giant screamed, not a sound of pain, but of profound frustration, and then threw back its head, massive pale wings crashing all around, tail clearing swaths of buildings. Seeing her opportunity, Jeffe didn't hesitate. Folding her wings, she dove into the monster's gaping black eye. And I'll stop it there, lest we go on to another chapter.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, I mean, I think you definitely got some people's attention, and I have your website here at the bottom right now, but I will also make sure I add it to the description box for the video too, so that people are able to access it a bit more easily. So I guess since it's the pumpkin hour, I'm going to just go ahead and add everybody back here. You know, I'm sure they're all like, you know, I'm probably going to get someone like picking their nose or something. This is like, I've got to say that, you know, what is it, like circumstances are like the mother, or necessity is the mother of invention? Is that what it is? I'm not sure. What, I can't remember. Words are hard. But like, I mean, my point is, when I started doing this vodcast, whatever people want to call it, like we were limited. Like we could only have, I think it was some stupid number, like 4 people on the screen at once. And it was this interface. Yeah, we were using BeLive, and BeLive had a lot of annoying things. Like you had to use credentials to get in and everything. A lot of writers didn't like that because, you know, we're very private types and whatever. So then actually Stephen Graham Jones told me about StreamYard. And, you know, I was just amazed I was able to even book Stephen Graham Jones on the show. But then I got a tip from him and I was like, wow, I feel like the most amazing girl in the world. I mean, I didn't get to make out with him, but that's okay. I mean, he's married, so that would be awkward. But anyway, so yeah, and this has just been amazing because it's like we can all be together. Oh yeah, Rebecca has his book. That book.
It is so good.
It is so fucked up.
Oh yeah, it is. It is, but it's wonderful.
So I've got to say, like, I mean, just, you know, this is digressing a little bit, but, you know, since you showed me the book, you know, when I was reading that was like one of those, I mean, I read a lot of horror. I watch a lot of horror. I feel like I have a pretty high limit for things. That book I had to actually like put down multiple times and walk away and just like do something else that made me happy, because I was just like, this is so dark. I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish it.
What's the book again?
The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones, and that's his newest book. So, I mean, the one that I think most people know him for is probably either mapping the interior for like the diehard horror fans, or there's, Mongrels, which is kind of the more literary one, which of course I haven't read yet because, I mean, that's work, right? But anyway, so yeah, I mean, we've had a whole range of things tonight. We've had clowns and orcas and slice of life literary and dinosaurs and shapeshifters and
walls that walk you.
uncategorized thing with the living walls. I feel like I am missing.
So how would you categorize that?
Your thing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's what I said too.
I mean, I think if you've got living, talking walls, that's probably horror. I mean,
it's kind of weird.
Horror.
if you're
Paranormal.
human flesh, it's definitely horror. Now,
Or magical realism, depending
Yes,
on the plant.
there is that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it's really more, maybe it is a question of like, how are they sustained? Do they run on evil, or are they just there?
Some of them are evil.
Oh, okay.
You'll get more in the next story.
Okay.
Good.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess just, I had a really insightful question and then I lost it, which of course is like the way that these things seem to go. But yeah, I mean, I know, Jeffe, you talked about like how you've actually been doing some, shifted to doing some online readings and things. So, I mean, that's kind of been a cool transition, because it's like it sort of frees up, and I think this was something we were talking about more offline, but it kind of frees up a bit more of your personal time between events.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of opportunities that I wouldn't have otherwise gotten. I've done panels with, small libraries in the Southeast and East Coast who are really desperately reaching out to the patrons that they can no longer receive. And so it's really a wonderful opportunity, and they're super excited to get to talk to authors in a way that they wouldn't normally get to. But it doesn't replace the in-person human connection. I'm looking forward to having that again.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I remember, Book Bar, and I don't know. I mean, one thing I kind of miss, and it's like I sort of like resented it at the time a little bit, was like, so many like small venues, because, literary arts, we don't make a lot of money like, rock and roll stars. So it's like we're usually crammed into these very small, spaces. And it's like, it's great, being conscious that you're an artist, because it's like you can't get fat, because it's like, it's just, there's just the natural arts diet, so you get a lot of people in one place. But it's like, I just remember one time I was at the Whittier Cafe and we were doing an open mic, and it was like a sauna in there. I mean, it was just like there was like steam building up on the insides of the windows and everything, because like everyone was just like packed in there. And I'm like, you don't get that feeling right now. I mean, it's just, if you had anything close to that right now, people would be like, this is unsafe.
Yeah.
You just think about what aerosols you're inhaling.
Oh, yeah. All the things. All the things. I mean, if you can smell what somebody ate last night, you're too close.
And of course, the truth is, it was unsafe even then.
Probably. Probably, yeah. But, I mean, we live dangerously. It's fine.
You gotta drink enough alcohol. It makes it antiseptic.
Bowen, I try.
There is no try. Only do.
So yeah, I mean, I just, I don't know. I mean, two of you, so Bowen and Jeffe, this was your first time reading on here. So let's see. I picked on Jeffe before. Bowen, you can go first. How was this whole experience for you?
Well, I was nervous coming into it because I'd never done one of these before. I had read for like a critique kind of thing. I've read to agents and pitched and stuff like that, but not read to an audience with my work. So and just seeing how the whole thing functioned was the logistics of it was kind of more of my worry. But then once I put my my reading up, it blocked out my we blocked out the screen of what you guys are doing. So I'm like 2 pages in going, oh crap, I'm not hearing anything. So what if I'm not even doing anything? And Amy's frantically trying to text me going, you got to reset and come back in because nobody's getting anything. So that was going through my mind. And then, so other than that, I enjoyed the experience. And then I liked being able to listen to everybody else and kind of chime in on what their stories were and how they affected me or ideas that I got from them. So I liked it. I'm glad he set this up.
All right, cool. So yeah, Jeffe, I mean, how did this experience compare with some of your other reading experiences?
Well, it was fun. It was super fun to get to hear everybody's stories, and it's more reading than a lot of events are. It's fun sometimes to get to talk more and have discussion and questions and that sort of thing. So if we were going to add more of that in the future, that would always be fun. But I loved getting to hear everyone read.
Yeah, well, and I'm hoping that that at some point we might be able to add some additional events, especially if somebody's got a book coming out soon, where we can do like a Q&A with maybe like 1 or 2 people and have it more focused. There's always like, I don't know, I'm one of those people who I'm always like, oh, there's so much more we can do, but then it's like I also need to clone myself, but I don't know. I think I could probably handle that. But yeah, it's definitely something I would love to do. And it's just, I don't know, it's so much fun. Just getting everybody together and, having some time where we can just, talk about stories and like escape reality for a little bit. And especially with the way that things have been lately. I mean, it's just been kind of a grim. That's a new word. Grim.
I like that.
Few months. So yeah, I mean, this has just been, I don't know. I mean, this event for me, like, from a totally selfish perspective, has definitely been something that's, been keeping me going, because it's like I get to look forward to, working with every different group of people every month. It's always something new. And, I mean, I always have this anxiety. Katie's like, oh, Amy's a cool host. I'm like, whatever, butter me up more, Katie. Fine. But it's just, I always have this anxiety on the day of like, oh, I am not worthy. I don't know why in the hell anybody does this. But, it's like, I'm always so much happier, once I actually get into it and do it, because it's so worth it, at least for me. And I know that people do watch this and it makes them happy. And that means a lot to me too. So, and sometimes we help people sell books, and that's great.
We love selling books.
Yeah, selling books is good.
Please.
And exposing people to new authors that they never would have thought of is great. I think that like when I first came to Denver, one thing that really stood out is like I went to so many readings, and partly because I wanted to get to know more of the writers in Denver, and that was great too, because the writers here are amazing, and I'm sure they're amazing in New Mexico too, Jeffe. It's just, I happened to see you when you were in Denver with Dorinda. But
Denver's my hometown. That's where I grew up, so I still claim it.
Okay, so you're a Denverite anyway.
I'm a Denver girl actually, my mother is a Denver native. She was born there, which is unusual these days.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That is weird. It's like almost everybody here is from somewhere else. I mean, I was born in California, was in New Jersey for 11 years, and then came here. So, I mean, I don't know. It's one of many pieces of evidence that shows I don't know what the fuck I'm doing with my life. um, anyway, but yeah, I mean, it's just, I have seen it in action where it's like there is something special about, you know, when readers get to actually hear authors read their own works live. And it's a very powerful connection that people experience, you know, and I mean, it's not just with writers, you know, I mean, like I saw it with my boyfriend and Carter Wilson, like he did this event at Book Bar, and, you know, my boyfriend just like had this whole like new form of hero worship, and he's going to hate me for saying this, but I mean, he was just like, oh my God, that was so amazing, you know. So, and it's like, you don't get that, you know, from just like looking at books on the shelves. You get it from hearing people read their stuff. So
it's a little like, it reminds me of live theater, because I've been doing that too, but there's very much that connection that you can't, only way you can do it is by making this handmade object, as opposed to something that's on video or something that's on an e-reader. You can't replicate this.
No.
Hey, I have to say goodnight, folks. Thank you all very much for hosting and cheering and everything else. And we'll see you next time.
All right. Good night, Matt.
Good night, Matt.
Good
Good
night.
night.
All right. Yes. Well, I'm sure we're all pumpkining at this point. I'm going to probably have pumpkin soon myself. So, yeah, does anyone have anything else they want to add before I do the whole sign-off-y thing?
No, thanks very much for inviting me.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeffe, and thank you for hanging out until the bitter end here. I know that we ran over, but it was a good show, and I'm so glad everybody showed up, and it was fun.
Thank you very much.
Thank
All right.
you.
Okay.
All right.
We'll see
Have
you
a
all
good-
next month.
Good night.
Have a good night, all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. All right. So, oh, sorry, Jeffe. Okay. So I just wanted to share my screen really quick here. I think I can get this to work. Let's see if I can get it to work. But if you are interested in seeing more about Jeffe's stuff, you can actually go to her website at jeffekennedy.com, and she has podcasts, she has her blog, she's got all kinds of stuff going on here. So yeah, lots of fun things. You can find out about virtual, I mean, I don't think she's really doing in-person appearances right now, but she's got upcoming workshops and things like that. Nothing this year yet, though. Okay, so there's that. And also I mentioned Dorinda Jones, and really, let's see. Just want to make sure I'm sharing the right thing here. Yeah, so with Dorinda Jones, she's got her Charlie Davidson series, and she actually has like a whole, like, at least as far as I know, I think this shop is still open. Like, if you become a hardcore Charlie Davidson fan, there are lots of like fun coffee quotes and stuff that she has, and she has like I think cafe press store where you can get like t-shirts and things like that with Dorinda Jones sayings on them. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, other than that, that's our show for tonight. And I thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to, if you watch this regularly, that you subscribe. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers so that we can finally get a custom URL for this show, and it will be easier to find it, and everybody will be happy. So we're pretty close. I think we're within 30 people, maybe a little less at this point. Also, just as a friendly reminder, I know I posted about this before, but on the 17th of February, we're going to have our next show at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, and we will be featuring Pam Houston, that night, and she wrote Cowboys Are My Weakness, and her most recent book is Deep Creek. So be sure to check that out, and I will be seeing you in February. So have a good night, stay safe, and I will be talking to you soon. All right, take care. Bye.